years. One of our favorite memories was playing soccer with the kids that we met named Lola and Levi. It was so fun to see the smiles on their faces, and it wasn't just the kids having fun, it was our volunteers as well.
One of the challenges that we faced was, while it moved very smoothly, one setback we had was one of my softball games got rescheduled to the date of the project. So I wasn't able to be there for the majority of it, but I was able to still make an impact and still bond with some of the kids towards the end of it.
Kaylee Callan, a junior from Spring Hill High School who attended our project, said, "My perspective changed seeing all of the different personalities of the kids. I really enjoyed spending time with them." We absolutely loved being able to volunteer at Salvation Army and would love to do it in the future. And we thank you guys. Do you guys have any questions?
Thank you for listening and for all you contribute to the volunteer class. Are there any questions?
I have a question. I heard it said that it's kind of prestigious to get into this class now because there's so many kids. I wonder if we're looking to take this like even outside, like at an after school activity, or add more classes or something like that so more people can be involved.
Yeah, that would be ideal for sure. It'd be cool to have an after school aspect of it and maybe add more projects outside of the class. So that would be something for sure to look more into.
How do you guys choose your the projects you do and the people you serve?
So first semester, they're just randomly selected. And then second semester, seniors get priority. So a lot of us have been in the class before and we know what projects we've liked and have enjoyed. So we get to pick our like top choices. And then from that, they pick our groups and who we work with and what projects.
Very cool.
How many people? How many people are, how large can the organization be? Just curious. And and I know at the top of the presentation there they said that it's an application process. So I'm wondering how many seats need to be filled and how many applications do you take in to fill those seats?
So we range between 15 to 22. So it just kind of depends on the year. And I think next year we will have 17, I believe. Yeah. So it just kind of depends on the kids and their involvement and the application.
And how many applications do you generally field?
Well, we're losing 7 senior, or how many of you? Eight seniors.
Yeah.
So I think we received like 10 applications.
Okay.
And a lot of people want in the class, but then sometimes there's scheduling conflicts with certain pathways. And so we encourage the students that can't get in the class to still go to the project, because any student can go to any project. They don't have to be in the class.
Sure.
So, and we recruit, like that's part of their grade is to get up there and recruit and get as many kids as they can. A couple of the projects this semester were a little bit smaller. Thelma's Kitchen only allowed us to bring 8. So that's kind of unusual. Sure. That limited us a little bit, but normally we take 30 plus. Okay. Salvation Army, we normally take like 30 to 40.
Oh, wow. So. Well, and Thelma's Kitchen, I had a question on the one thing that they'd like to do over is potentially do some fundraising so that they could hand out some of those $15 tokens. Is it a $15 donation to buy a $15 token, or is there some kind of discounting there if you were to do it in bulk?
It's kind of confusing how it works, but I think a token is about $15, but all of their meals range to different prices. And so somebody could come in there and pay $5 and get a smaller meal, or the $15 is a bigger meal with a dessert. And
sure.
So, and that's newer this year. They've changed their policies a little bit this year.
And the last one, I promise, is, Mrs. Melius brought up expansion beyond doing it during school. Are there any other what are the limiting factors for you to expand it to be larger, to potentially do it after school? I know it requires sponsors and a lot of time, right? But I'm just curious to know what the appetite is, and then what would be involved to really expand it.
I think one of the obstacles we would have is the kids that are involved in the volunteer program are involved in everything. So you saw a couple of these kiddos up here a few times. And so it's just time. and they are required each semester to go to 3 projects. So they have to go to 6 a year, and that already sometimes is challenging between sports and academics and other commitments. And so that would probably be the biggest
Yeah.
obstacle is
I-
time.
I will build off of that. A big part of the class is getting to volunteer within our elementary schools, and we have to do that during the school.
During school.
days, right? Which is, if you ask some of them, some of their favorite parts. And so that is a big part of the program too.
It's almost as if we had this planned, because the last comment, I promise, is I've got 2 at Prairie Creek. And I got to tell you right now, you guys are rock stars. I mean, I hear about it every time you guys visit. I ask my kids, you know, if you were to do the lead-in story for the news at night, when you guys are there, you're the top story of the day.
Thank you.
How many, that's one more question. How many sophomores and juniors come to your projects that aren't in the class?
Oh, man. It varies depending on the project, but I would say we have about 25 sophomores that volunteered, 20 to 25-ish sophomores that volunteered this year. And a lot of them have expressed interest, but again, couldn't fit it in. And so some of them are going to try to make it their senior year or just go to projects.
Over 50 students outside of these kids are attending at least one.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for coming in. This is an awesome, oh, I'm
I have
sorry.
I just have one quick comment, which is the 14,000 volunteer hours. I just like I like numbers. So to put that into context, that would be one person getting up and going to their 8 to 5 for 6 years and almost 9 months. That's what the volunteer club does. And I love that number. And I look forward to seeing that number bigger next year. Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming in.
Okay, again, thank you very much. And again, a lot of recognition also. The sponsors for that organization truly believe in it, and they're big cheerleaders to make sure that it continues to excel. So again, that's our good news announcements and recognitions. And we did, for everybody, all the students that were here tonight, there's pizza out in the lobby. Make sure you stop by and get some pizza. Take it with you, eat in the lobby. But again, we appreciate all you do, and your talents are on display, as well as the staff that help you each and every day. Thank you again.
Thank you. It looks like our volunteer club had a video. Can we add that to our agenda? We can watch it later. Yes. Awesome. Thank you. All right, moving on, 8.01, we need an executive session.
Madam President, I move the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel to protect the privacy interest of an identifiable individuals under COMA. Those to be in session include the Board of Education members, superintendent of school, and assistant superintendent of schools, and administrators as requested. The executive session to begin at 6:40, with the open meeting resuming at 30 minutes. Okay, 7:10
Second,
at this,
go ahead.
7:10 at this place.
Second,
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, Rachel, please take the vote.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Hole,
Yes.
Mrs. Baker,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Chitwood,
Yes.
approved.
We are back in session, moving on to moving on to the consent agenda.
Yeah, Madam President, before we jump there real quick, just technicality question for me on 8.05, the Y aftercare MOU. There's reference in that document that speaks specifically to the $1 million liability certificate that's attached to the document, and it's not in the document. So I know it's a technicality, but
I can follow up. It's the same way it's been provided to us the last 2 years, so.
can we get the certificate
Sure.
added to it and leave it in there then? Okay, with the understanding that we'll get it added to it, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I also had a quick question about the Pebble Go item, 8.06. Are we approving the standard Pebble Go platform, or does that include the Pebble Go Create as well? Does anybody know?
The standard contract that we've had for the past several years, so no new additions to it. It's the same contract from last year, same price. So it has no new additions.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that it's for the research content and the reading platform
Yes.
only.
Yes, in fact, I verify with my elementary librarian here, but yes, that is correct.
And
Okay.
it is K2, right? K2 or K3? Because I know there's a
K3 is-
Pebble Go Next or something that takes it through fifth.
It's all together, but I would say, and certainly elementary librarians, yeah. But there's a lot of primary component that the librarians use.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure because
Yeah.
I know that they collect information from these websites. I just wanted to make sure that it sounds like with the Pebble Go, the standard one, they're just collecting our IP address. But if you go to the
To create.
or those other ones, then they start collecting first name, last name,
Yeah,
email.
no, we don't have
all
that.
So I just wanted to make sure that we were protected and not giving out data. Okay,
We're good.
thank you.
Okay, any other further questions?
All right, well, then I'm going to move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the one addition from Doug. John?
Yes, with the knowledge that us being an insured party on the YMCA is going to be added later.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Rachel, please take the vote.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Hole,
Yes.
Mrs. Baker,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Chitwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
approved.
Awesome. Moving on to 9.01, the Spring Hill High School SPUB travel to Nashville.
Yes, we have that staff person here that will tell you about the trip that they're requesting to go on this next year to Nashville.
Good evening. My name is Anna Manning. I've been the communications teacher at Spring Hill or at the high school for 15 years. And once upon a time, I was a journalism student there too. I had some very cute student journalists here to tell you all about the trip. But when we realized they were going to have to wait for 30 minutes, I sent them back home to finish the yearbook. So they are in my classroom eating Eggo waffles and doing that as we speak. So the trip that we're asking to go on is to the National High School Journalism Convention, which this fall is being held in Nashville, Tennessee. The students will have the opportunity to definitely experience the city, but the real treat is the convention itself. So the first day there is a pre-convention day where they get to spend all day in very concentrated workshops with industry professionals. And then there's 2 following days of standard convention of, various sessions that you can attend based on what's interesting to you. It's very secure. It's in a standard convention center, but these are truly impressive events. The largest one I was at was in Washington, D.C. when I was a K-State student, being on the staff of the convention. We had 5,000 student journalists at that convention, and that's not counting all of the industry professionals and the advisors, dragging themselves along every morning. It's a really very impressive event. The kids get an untold amount out of it. Kansas journalists or student journalists always make an especially impressive telling because Kansas has very special student journalism laws that actually protect those students as they are, or as professional journalists are protected, which means that they cannot be censored, but it also means that they have a lot of pressure as well. So they go through rigorous editing processes. And for them to get to collaborate with other student journalists from across the country and share that beauty of true student journalism, it's just one of the most gorgeous things. Plus, we have a really good time. I will be figuring out the student-friendly Nashville nightlife for us to get a little taste of that, of course. But we've been on other trips to Dallas, to Washington, D.C., to St. Louis. The last one we went on was to Kansas City. That one actually wasn't as fun, but it was okay. It was okay. Well, they like to go and travel, you know. I didn't even let them stay in a hotel for that one. I was like, get on the bus. So for these trips, you have an attachment. I take a very select number of students. It's not a whoever can go gets to go kind of thing. So I range from 6 to 8 students. And the 4 students who I had here this evening with me are the 2 editor-in-chiefs and managing editors of our publications next year. They're all current high school juniors. Pray for me when graduation comes around next year. It's going to break my heart. But they are exceptional students who lead exceptionally, do their own exceptional work. And they're very excited for this trip. They were all 3 of the 4 did that Kansas City trip. So they're very excited for this opportunity. Because we only travel every other fall and because I take a select number of exceptional students, that allows me to keep the cost very low. So as you'll see, the students for what's a 4 to 5 day trip are only paying $300. The program is able to cover the rest of that. All we're asking the board for is enough to cover my substitute and the Suburban itself and the gas to get down and back. Do you have any questions for me? Sorry, my kids aren't here. They would say really nice things, I promise.
I'm sure they do. And I'm subscribed.
Thank you.
Subscriber.
Subscribe.
Me too.
Yeah, I get
Thank
my
you.
regular.
Thank you.
And it gives me things to go through. So I think it's really great. I have to say this comment every time.
Okay.
Because I do. As one chaperone always makes me nervous. That's
Yes.
that's a hard time. I'm just saying it out loud for everybody's benefit or for my benefit. But I think this is awesome. It's great.
Thank you.
I love reading what they write.
We are under discussion that my assistant advisor, Alex Kunkel, would also travel. It's just a little bit tricky to have 2 adults for 6 or 8 kids because they're not babies. And it's a whole nother hotel room, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a reasonable chance though that he will go with us. So we just are planning this a little earlier than normal. So there's maybe a few more small details kind of up in the air. None of those details would really change our proposal very significantly, but that is always good. One thing I do when I travel alone with students is that I do find a male chaperone from another school who I know, who's kind of on deck for me, because I'm certainly not about to go in and check their hotel rooms, and they may have different issues that my female students may have. So I've kind of got like, you know, a guy in my back pocket situation going on for those kinds of emergencies, because yeah, being their only adult far, far away from home is a scary thing. You're not wrong.
It is. And
Yeah.
you have a question more now. Well, which that kind of gets to it. Most everybody responds and goes, I buddy up with another
Yeah.
school that I know.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah. I also realized that I can make a Life 360 and make them all get on it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea.
Didn't do that last time. Didn't have that last time. So excited.
There you go.
Any other questions for me? Okay. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Miss Manning. All right, moving on to the 9.02 26-27 calendar.
Yes, we already have the district calendar for the 25-26 school year in place. Tonight, we're bringing you a draft of what we recommend to be the 26-27 district calendar. And Dr. Robinson and that committee have been working on this for much of this semester, and they're going to present you that calendar with some of the recommendations. And he also has a teacher representative that was part of that to help as well. So, Dr. Robinson, take it away.
She was easy to rope in because she already was presenting tonight. So I appreciate Anna Manning assisting. I'll hit on just a couple things. One, just some context. If you remember last year, we made a significant change to next year's calendar. We built this calendar knowing that if the biggest change was around conferences. We built it very similar to next year's calendar because we felt like we needed to try that, experience it, see how it works. We will plan to get feedback from families and from staff next year. If we try it next year and we find out it is not productive, it's not meeting the objectives that we thought it would, then we'll come back to you with a recommendation on how to correct it. But you'll notice the overall framework is built off of similar calendar structure to what you've already approved for next school year. We met with the calendar committee twice this year. We started with a couple of different options, got feedback from the calendar committee, which was made up of individuals from each of the buildings. We took that back and presented them with two different options that they worked through. And actually, I think initially we're kind of split 50-50 on the two options. The biggest differences are really the start and end of the year, and a few things that I'll let Mrs. Manning touch on. And so we're presenting tonight a recommendation for 26-27 and asking for you to consider taking action on it at the June meeting. So with that, oh, one other thing, just a quick reminder of how our calendar is built on a couple things. One, we work on hours, not days. Typically here, you will see some districts in Kansas that still go by a minimum number of days. We work off of 1,116 school hours, so we have to make sure our calendar meets that requirement. And also that it meets the 187-day contract requirement that we have negotiated with our teachers. As we start trading things out, just a reminder, any professional development we have counts as half of towards student contact time, and parent-teacher conferences counts as if it was regular school time. So just if you have questions, we can talk more about those things, but I will turn it over to Anna to talk about a few of the things, and I'll jump in as needed.
Yeah, of course. Just the teacher perspective, I'll say I've been on the calendar committee several years now, and I don't think I've ever seen two calendars come together in the like best of both worlds situation. It always seems like there's half of us go away happy and half of us go away kind of grumpy about it. This was actually a pretty good collaborative final calendar. Some of the highlights I think are really good. I'm always about protecting those baby teachers because we need all of them forever. Is that in August, they will have their 3 days of new teacher academy. I'm sorry, we don't call it that anymore.
That's okay.
Okay. But then they get a 3-day weekend before returning to work. And then those 4 days, it was sort of a challenging decision that K through 9 will have a 5-day week on their first week. But the teachers in the room were all pretty much on the same page that without, like when we start on a Thursday, sometimes those days feel kind of lost. You know, you spend a lot of time introducing yourself on a Thursday just to get on Monday and go, hey, do you remember me? No. Okay, let's start over again. And then of course we can always slow our pacing a little bit in that first week, offer some extra breaks, especially for the littles. I don't know that there's other substantial changes. I think there are some more PLC days. We also had a big discussion about taking off a random Friday or Monday in April. There was a lot of talk about Good Friday. We ultimately decided that because there's so little contact time already in the month of March, to move that professional development day you see on April 24th way down there. And that was especially tantalizing when Dr. Smith pointed out that that's right when state testing ends. So it's a nice little 3-day treat for the kids after they get to finish their state tests. And of course, it's kind of a little bit of a deep breath before we all plunge into May. Having teachers start on the 11th did mean what felt like a little bit of a later start or end time. But, you know, I've worked here a long time and we've historically stopped right before Memorial Day. And May 28th feels late, but it is right before Memorial Day. So a lot of the same mental feelings apply there. But I do think we had a lot of really good collaboration. Anything I forgot?
No, the only thing I was going to add is she mentioned where Good Friday falls. It actually falls the Friday after spring break.
Oh, yeah.
And so part of the concern there obviously is the amount of time we were already taking off. The other change from our office staff was moving kindergarten roundup. I don't think any of us were aware how important some of those little details to the calendar are, like kindergarten roundup. Kindergarten roundup has traditionally been the first Friday in April. I think next year's calendar might be the first one because that's where that Good Friday Professional Development Day falls. That moves it off. But it makes it real easy for our office staff to continue to remind parents when they call in and ask, when is kindergarten roundup? Well, it's always the first Friday in April. So we moved it on this calendar back after getting some feedback from them. But you have questions?
I have a couple comments. They're edits. So your color coordinating, I think, is off a little bit. So especially in April, the colors you have on the calendar itself and then the colors you have written don't coincide. Like the second
you're correct.
is purple, the 26th.
Yeah.
So along with the same for the end of the year, the May 27th. Yeah. So just a heads up to you guys.
Get that corrected.
Yeah. The other thing, and I think I said this last year when we were approving, I'm interested to see how this works, but I'm not a fan of conferences being so late in March. I think there are many students, the students that need that intervention time is crucial to turn around that semester. And I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong, but I wonder if attendance will even be less since it's butting up against spring break than it is in February. So I'm interested to see what feedback and what that looks like. But I really think the kids that need those interventions are, I mean, we're on the way out mid-March, so.
The argument on the other side of that is the way we had our previous calendars, you chopped up intervention. So because you'd start a little bit, you'd stop a little bit, you'd start a little bit. So when you really look at January and February, which are typically times where we struggle because of weather days as well, that you've removed conferences from that block of time, which should make it easier to keep consistent instruction, consistent intervention. But it's a fair statement, Mrs. Melius. We'll watch all of that.
Do you think that we're gonna push teachers to bring families into that conversation earlier then? Because I think if we wait until mid-March, that's I just feel like that's the time parents and teachers collaborate the most, is at conferences.
I can speak to the high school. We already know we kind of have to. The counseling staff, as far as I understand it anyway, has made it pretty clear because the high school February conferences are for pre-enrollment. So in our advisories, right? So I have like 22 juniors who are now like my children, right? I've been enrolling them for every year of high school. Now next year I get sort of a free pass because they're going to be seniors. But you know, I meet historically with about 90% of those families because I am like, I'm like, come talk to me about your child. It's been made pretty clear to me at counseling that, or by counseling, that we can't do that in March. It's entirely too late to start the enrollment process. So the high school, I think, kind of has to. I don't want to like make that a statement. I'm not actually in charge of anything, but as I understand it, we will need to be doing some of that work earlier. But we do see our advisories 3 times a week, so we can kind of get a jump on that work. But I, as both a parent and a teacher, I agree. Like, I would like to talk to my kid's teacher before March. But again, that's on me too.
And some of that, our teaching and learning department's already been working with our counseling team on a recommendation because it's early enrollment. It's also individual plans of study. And I was looking at our elementary teachers out here because I don't want to speak for them. I've been out of the classroom a long time, but I would also suggest if the first conversation we're having is at spring conferences, we're probably too late. And I think that was one of the pieces of feedback we got last year when we were looking at it from an elementary perspective. There were questions at the secondary level, and I think teaching and learning has been working on a recommendation as to how to better manage that piece with the calendar change.
A lot of the elementary teachers on the calendar committee said that they felt like they would have better information to provide to parents by March. Like Dr. Robinson said, a lot of that intervention work that's so broken up. And like, sure, my kid as an elementary schooler, his teacher will have had him since August, but at the same time, second semester is a whole brand new game. And in order to have enough to tell us, you know, later, they felt like that was better too. Elementary teacher. Again,
we will track that in attendance and all really closely to see how it compares to what we've been getting. And if we need to make a recommendation to you all in the spring, we'll do so.
I don't mean to make this about next year's calendar because I know this is the next year, but I too am a little bit nervous. I think people might have not paid attention to the email to see the survey with the changes. Shocker. So I think they're going to be surprised. So is your plan to do like a survey just to get a pulse on how the 25, 26 calendar is working out? And then we really solidify this?
Yes, I think there's a couple of things you'd want to do. I think we'd want to look at attendance. I think one of the things to keep in mind is we have a few places, I don't want to pick on the high school standing next to me, but their conference attendance isn't great to start with.
Right.
And so I think we want to really compare it to does it increase it? Does it not? Do we still have the same level of engagement? So I think that's a big marker. And then I think there's a matter of surveying both staff and families at that point to get perspectives of our teaching staff. Some of the issues that you're bringing up, did it create those for our teachers? And Are there things that we can adjust, or do we need to
Right.
move our conference piece back closer to what it was?
So if we move forward, we either approve or not approve in June. And then if we just get bombed on the survey results, then you'll come back and say, okay, let's tweak it.
Yep.
And is that gonna make other people super pained? I mean, I don't want you guys to have this conversation twice, but I appreciate a pulse check on how the 25-26 school year goes. You guys are, yeah, I guess the pain is.
Unfortunately, I think it's kind of how calendar goes. You're going to get feedback, positive and negative, every year.
Yeah.
I think we want to look at, are the objectives that we set initially with the calendar committee, are they being met?
Right.
If they're not, then I think we need to come back and fix it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the feedback. The ability to provide feedback and
I
adjust.
think it's fair too to say like the October and February breaks have been that way since I was an elementary schooler. Maybe it's time just to try it. Like I was initially very negative about that. I'm like, nobody's going to come. Oh my gosh, they're all just going to, you give them an inch, they take a mile, they're going on a cruise, all this kind of stuff. But realistically, all we can do is see. And if it fails, then people have to come back in February because they didn't come in March. So now you have to come, period, the end, no more discussion, So we'll say we tried it and I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I was worth it.
I think it's worth a shot. Yeah.
Your comment that there are, did you say priorities set with the committee? What was the committee's top priorities when they were creating this?
So I think it was a couple things. I think it was increasing instructional time in January and February, which we should be able to really look at. Are we seeing student progress? You brought up intervention. We should especially be able to look at our intervention students to see, are they making more gains than anticipated based on having a consistent amount of time? That was the biggest one, was trying to reduce the interruptions in January and February and provide consistent instruction in hopes that, and I think the other one will be to see, do we see conference attendance? Does it change? Is it positively or negatively? How is it impacted? But I think the initial objective was increase instructional time in January and February by keeping from having multiple times where we were closing school, to putting it all together in one.
Any other thoughts?
Just a question, is President's Day always, is that ever on the table? As far as that increasing that instruction time in January and February, because I know not all districts take that off. And we used to have the conferences, so it made a big, long weekend, but I trust your judgment. I'm just curious.
Yes, it could be. And I think we probably have to look at how it impacts I'm trying to remember, President's Day is one given to our classified staff. Looking at Michelle. So it may impact, if we changed it, it may impact some other contracts that we'd have to adjust, but it's always on the table. Typically in those cases, we've really leaned on the committee to say, is it a beneficial day or not? And it wasn't one that came up in discussion this year.
So I don't know if anybody's looked, in 2027, the Super Bowl's on February 14th.
On Valentine's Day?
I know, unbelievable. Anyway, and I just got to bring it up again because everybody gets angina. And for those at home, Mahomes' contract goes through 2031. People are pretty happy about the draft this year. So we get this Super Bowl angina, are we going to get Wednesday off? Are we going to go to the parade? It's a real phenomenon. It consumes staff. It consumes students. I'd like us not taking President's Day and just having that Wednesday off in the bank, because it just preoccupies everybody's world and it's gotten out of hand.
Well, I think I will say this, I find it really contradictory and interesting that we would hear so much. I haven't heard from staff, but do you hear so much from staff when that's opposite of what this committee is wanting, is more instructional time during those months, but then they would want those days off. So that sounds contradictory, but.
So I guess I would say this calendar is probably a win in some respects, John, because when you look at where President's Day falls, I think we get lucky that the Super Bowl would back right up to that, if that's the case. And those people who need an extra day before they come back. I think one of the things we've tried to do with the committee, and sometimes it's more challenging than others, is to make sure that the recommendation that we're putting out is best for kids and good for staff, but keeping what's best for kids piece in front of us first. I'll pick on Shelley Huber because one of the things that she wants to keep in front of us is that there's a lot of districts that have the last day before Christmas break and the last day at the end of the year is a half day. Those are things that aren't in the recommendation, but it's not a bad idea. It could be something that the board considers in the future. But ultimately, the recommendation we're bringing to you, we thought was best from an instructional time. So I don't know. I struggle a little bit with, do we build it in and hope that I hope that we have that problem that the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl and that we're concerned about a parade. But I think if we're looking at it from what's best instructionally, I still think this is our best option instructionally, and we deal with the Super Bowl parade. The one advantage to this calendar and to next year's is you don't have conferences in that same time period. So if you were making a determination, it's much more difficult when you're trying to figure out where do you move conferences and are you going to allow teachers to go to the parade, but ask them to come back and do conferences? Are we canceling conferences altogether? Like none of those are good options. So the next 2 years, at least with the calendar options you have in front of you, you'd have a little bit more flexibility in making that decision should you need to.
I'll give you, Mrs. Melius, a small teacher perspective too on that contradiction, because you're not wrong that we want consistency, but then we all ask for a break. I think it's that we want mostly consistency, but then every so often we need a deep breath. And I regularly think of my baby teacher colleagues who are drowning always. And that's not because they're doing anything wrong. We all drowned for a little while. But when I look at this calendar, I see multiple months, more months where it's like consistent. Back to consistent. Whereas previous calendars, we've had like a chunk of every month. It just felt like chaos. And as a high school teacher, I can tell you when you see kids for 2.5 days, those become fake days. Like almost any of the kids say it, the teachers say it. You're like, what's happening? Like, am I going to see you tomorrow? And then when we have a half day, like when the kids get out at 1:15, we have 25-minute long classes. I don't want to say that that's useless. Any minute I get with the kid is good, but like, it's a challenge, so like having a Monday here and there is a break. But mostly you're right. We do want the consistency.
Well, I appreciate those candid comments.
Yes.
Any other thoughts, questions? Okay.
If not, we'll correct the color coding and bring it back to you at the next meeting.
Thank you very much. All right. Moving on to 9.03 program update on USD230 health services.
Yeah, we're going to hear just briefly from our health professionals, again, to serve our students and staff every day. If you remember a couple of years ago, they were very active in helping us do Project Adam, implement that across our district. As you know, those are our opening ceremony also. They're very much adamant that we do CPR training for all of our staff each and every year. That is all due to their efforts. In addition, our legislators also are in Topeka always seem to be passing statutes that put some responsibility on the health professionals in terms of whether it be dental screenings, eye screening, hearing screenings. And we thought we'd have our health clerks come down and just share a little bit of some of their most recent initiatives they've been working on and some of the things as they wrap up this year that they're most proud of, and then also heading into next year, what they already have their eyes on that they know are going to be some things they got to keep a close eye and tab on. So I'm going to turn over to them at this point. But again, thank you all very much for what you do every day. And thank you for being here tonight to enlighten us.
Well, thank you. I was going to do a little introduction with all of that information, but you kind of did that for me. So I'll let Crystal come and talk to you a little bit about dental screenings.
Hi, my name's Crystal Farrow. I'm the nurse over at Spring Hill Elementary. Per our handbook, we are providing annual basic dental screenings on all elementary students. There have been a lot of barriers this last school year for getting that done. Johnson County Health Department had very low volunteer rates for their dental hygienists to the point where they were not even able to get all of the Title I schools their dental screenings done through them. The Kansas Department of Health, actually, they do have a position for a dental hygienist, and that was open for most of our school year. They did not have anyone in that position. And it's not just locally. The American Dental Hygienist Association in November of last year actually relaxed some of their guidelines to get more dental hygienists. They made it so that internationally, dental hygienists who have their credentialing somewhere else, and they made it easier for them to get it passed over into the US. They made it so that students who are showing competency in their dental programs, they can actually practice and see people before they're actually done with their credentialing. And they also made it so that schools that are affiliated with them, they pushed for more faculty and then more students per program, because most programs are about 20 students. And then locally as well, the state of Kansas actually joined a compact so that dental hygienists who are licensed in our state can also practice in other states that are part of the contract and vice versa. So Missouri can come over and help us here. With that though, Spring Hill Elementary was the only school that got their dental screenings done this year. When I spoke to the dental hygienist who did it, she said that she was hesitant to take our school because we do have close to 500 students. And when they look at what schools they would like to pick, they do see how many students are there. And she was hesitant to pick it because of the large student load. So as we were trying to figure out how to get the other schools dealt with, we reached out to other local schools and so we're like, hey, what do you guys do? Heartland Community Health was recommended highly. They have a mobile dental clinic. It is a bus essentially that comes out. They can do full dental exams. They can do sealants. They can do fluoride. With that though, parents would have to provide their dental insurance information. They can do just the yearly screenings or they could do the whole mobile clinic. Unfortunately, from the times that we started speaking with them until now, they have filled up for this upcoming school year. And just to kind of give you an idea of who they service, these are the districts that this particular company services for the yearly dental screenings. We also spoke with Health Partnership Clinic. They're a smaller local community health clinic. They have a branch in Paola as well as in Olathe and a couple other areas locally. They do also prioritize Title I elementary schools and early education centers. With that though, parents would still have to fill out a form and they would have the option for our students to get screened and fluoride treatment, just screened, or for parents just to completely opt out. If the information was not filled out and we don't get the paperwork back for the students, they will go ahead with the regular screening with no further treatment. They wouldn't have any identifying information on the students. But if parents would like them to have the fluoride treatment, they would need to provide the basic information that you would see on like any new patient form, like who you are, where you live, what your dental insurance is. Because they are low cost, they can provide help to our students that do not have dental care, but parents would have to provide some more information on what their home life looks like to get that help. And with that, then they also have resources to help students who have the urgent needs, and they have the low-cost dental clinic at their Olathe location. I checked with them just before coming here. They could still assist us, but they would be able to do just the elementary schools and the early learning. And then another option that we looked into is 3 separate nurses at 3 separate schools had parents actually reach out who are dental hygienists. And we're like, hey, if I go through and I get the proper training through the state of Kansas to do these screenings, would I be able to? And I personally was not able to find out if there were any rules or regulations coming from them, if they could still service in their own district, or if it would be a conflict of interest for them to screen at their own school. So those were a couple of things that we looked at, a couple different companies, and then parents again, after they saw the letter stating like, hey, we were not able to screen all the schools and here's why. They then reaching out and being like, yes, we could potentially go through this and screen. But again, like I said, I am not 100% sure if that's a conflict of interest through the state of Kansas. So that is kind of what we've been looking at for our dental screenings for next year. Again, we can always still see if we can rely on Johnson County and the state of Kansas to help us provide those dental screenings, but we just wanted to look at and see what the other options are. And then I would like to hand it over.
Hi, my name is Renee Arthur, and I'm the nurse at Wolf Creek Elementary School. The USD230 nursing team would like to discuss with you today an opportunity to enhance the health and safety of our students. Whoops, I should probably change my slides. So a new law came into effect on July 1st of 2024. They amended the Kansas House Bill number 2547 to include albuterol inhalers or nebulizers in the emergency medication kits. So they just went ahead and kind of looped it in with the epinephrine and the Narcan bill to include respiratory distress and the use of albuterol inhalers or nebulizers. So the way some of the key points of the House bill say that we can supply one or more albuterol meter dose inhalers or albuterol solution with either the spacers or the nebulizers. And the albuterol can be given to any individual experiencing the signs and symptoms of respiratory distress. So that does not mean that they have to have a pre-existing diagnosis of a respiratory condition. The bill also clarifies a lot of, kind of not holding individuals liable for civil damages resulting from administering the albuterol, such as the physicians or mid-level prescribers, the pharmacy, or any of the school personnel who would administer the albuterol, as long as they believe in good faith that that individual is having respiratory distress. So why should we add albuterol inhalers to our emergency med kits? There are chronic respiratory illnesses and there are also acute respiratory illnesses. So just looking through chronic, we have some examples are emphysema, chronic bronchitis, and asthma. The American Lung Association reports that in 2023, 35 million individuals in the United States have a chronic lung disease. As far as asthma is concerned, the American Lung Association said in 2022 that the children of the United States have a prevalence of about 7.5% of an asthma diagnosis, and adults have about 10.7%. We also have our acute respiratory tract illnesses, pneumonia, bronchitis, bronchiolitis, acute respiratory distress syndrome. And in 2019, just to give you a heads up on how big of a scale of an issue this is, the Frontiers in Medicine reported acute respiratory infections accounted for 330,000 cases per only 100,000 individuals. So that's like 3.3 infections per individual in a year. So here are some of our signs and symptoms of respiratory distress. Shortness of breath. Of course, the individual is looking like they're really having a difficult time breathing or talking. You might hear some wheezing, see some nasal flaring, some retractions of their chest, blue or purple skin, dizziness, or unresponsiveness. If you have ever sat next to a small child that is in respiratory distress and you do not have an inhaler in the school system for them, this will really speak to you about why this bill is important to us. Oops, sorry. So how would we know when we can administer the albuterol? I want to start by saying that the inhalers that we would carry in our stock emergency med kits do not replace the inhalers that parents should be supplying to the school for their kiddos that have a known diagnosis of asthma. However, I do feel like I have plenty of kids with asthma whose parents don't supply them, and it's not their fault that I don't have one for them. So I would use it, of course, for that case as well. I was able to find some sample protocols from the American Lung Association and the American Academy of Allergy and Asthma and Immunology. Those kind of talk a lot about asthma. So we would just need to, if we were wanting to look at developing a protocol for it through those, we would just need to change the verbiage from asthma to respiratory distress. There's also some hearsay that the Kansas Department of Education and the School Nurses Organization will be developing their own policies as well, but we have not seen anything on that yet. As a nursing team, we kind of propose just doing kind of what the bill did and looping in the albuterol and the respiratory distress into our current EpiPen policy. So when this all came about, like I said, I sat next to a 5-year-old who was struggling to breathe, did not have an asthma diagnosis, and it was really painful. So I quickly became very passionate about this. And I was ready to get started in August. So we already have a physician's order from Dr. Brian Metz of Midwest Ear, Nose, and Throat. I reached out to the Price Chopper in Spring Hill, and they would supply the inhalers for $28 per inhaler, and we'd need, I think, 11 for all of our schools. And then the law does specify that it needs to have a spacer with it, because that allows you to get more medication into the lungs versus concentrating it in the mouth and the throat. So spacers are very crucial for that reason. And because of the compact design of the inhaler and the spacer, we're recommending that versus doing a large albuterol nebulizer. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I do have some
Yes.
questions. So bringing asthma, so I'm well-versed, asthma since birth. So you're going to go ahead and get a regular albuterol. So it's 140 doses, 180 doses, and we're just going to use a spacer as a consumable.
Yes.
And just keep using.
Yes. So the
Because it's kind of like a bottle of Tylenol in the respect of,
correct.
Once you use the first dose, okay.
So how it would be, you are able to clean your inhaler in between uses if you're using it between different individuals. And then the spacer is, we found that one off of the William McGill School Nursing site, and it's a bulk package of cardboard spacers. So they're just one-use spacers. So the inhaler will clean, the cardboard spacer will dispose of, yes.
On a completely separate note, are you doing any nebulizing treatments ad hoc for students?
I don't have any. Do you at your
Okay.
school?
I do have one student who
Okay.
does bring their own nebulizer, and they do, when their asthma is really bad, they do need to use it at school as well.
Okay, I just didn't know whether we had nebulizers in every building already, and I'm curious. Thank you very much.
I think we do all have a nebulizer, but the parents would have to provide the separate like tubing and mask and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the real thing is what's our consumable cost here? Because we can't do this at $28 a pop, but we can do it at a nickel a pop or whatever a spacer is.
Right.
One other thing I would add, just so the board has that knowledge as well. With our policy recommendation that'll come at the next board meeting, one of the policies recommended by KSB this time around is specifically connected to this law. It'll be a new policy for the board to consider, but it outlines a lot of what they talked about. It puts procedures for storage and maintenance of both epinephrine and albuterol, and it outlines a little bit of what would be expected of the nursing staff, both in identifying who needs it and when to administer it. I was working on those policies today and just wanted to make sure you knew there's a policy recommendation coming.
I had a question regarding the dental screenings. I'm not very well versed in HIPAA and those things. Is there a way for families to indicate if their child either has dental insurance or does have regular cleanings to help
Yes.
remove that number? So that way we're not looking at 500, maybe we can get it down to like 3.
So at my school, what we did was I did send out 3 different alerts telling parents, hey, this is when we are going to be doing dental screenings. If you would not like your student to participate, please opt them out. I don't have the exact number, but I had maybe 20 students opt out.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can help with the verbiage, so it's a little more clear that versus opt out versus, hey, if you're already getting dental regular.
This is not
screenings,
necessary. If you have a.
Yeah,
Just child is being seen every 6 months.
That's
yes.
right, that's right.
Mhm. Yeah, we could definitely go ahead and make that a little bit clearer for our parents as well, that this is not necessarily something that they have to do. I know that I do have some parents who, like with the vision screenings, if they do go ahead and take their child every year or every 6 months, they will opt out. But for the most part, it's something that just kind of slips under the rug, and I'll still be screening students who just have their glasses ripped.
Well, I remember when you'd go into the little trailer and you'd put those blue things in and then your teeth, that was like really fun. So that's probably what I was thinking when I saw that email. So I'm just curious.
No, it's not. It's actually just them like visualizing the teeth, and then they give me codes for what each tooth looks like essentially. And then I inform parents if their child needs additional care.
There you go. Okay.
I had thought about the dental screenings, the health partnership clinic. I actually toured that a few weeks ago. Wonderful options. And I wondered if we already partnered with them, like if Cindy Jados would know if we already partner with them with some of our families. So it might be a question to ask. They offer more services than just dental screenings.
They are a full doctor's office as well as the dental. And like I said, the provider who was actually over at the Paola Clinic came to our Fit Fest and was there marketing and answering questions for parents as well. Like, hey, just so you know, we do have this low cost clinic and here is what we offer. So yes, I do agree that it is a wonderful resource and it's not just for the dental.
And some of the other school districts in Johnson County utilize them as well. So it could be awesome to see what services they're using, how they've implemented it. Like you could have a base to start with. So just a thought.
Well, I'll stay on dentistry. I'll come back in because one of the things you said was students, Kansas doesn't have a dental school. Well, they're working on it in see Wichita. So is it potentially UMKC students, D2s, or D3s could come and do this? Is that what you're saying?
For the change that the American Dental Hygienists Association had back in November, it didn't fully specify what degree of students they are allowing to then practice.
Okay.
It didn't go into that, and I'm not sure if it was hidden somewhere else and I could not find it.
Don't sweat it.
Per their press release that was clearly stated, they were going to allow students and residents to practice if they meet the competency requirements.
Okie dokie.
The state statute requires, at least currently, and they're probably making some adjustments, but Kansas statute 72-6251, if you're interested. But it does require somebody who has a certificate from a legally qualified dentist to be able to participate. And it requires us to offer it to all students unless they've had a dental screening in the last 3 months. So just to give the board again some context.
Well, and the question I had related to a comment that you made too is this conflict of interest with, local resident practicing hygienists or dentists, right? And Sharon, this comes out of Spring Hill leadership too, when we had the healthcare presentation. And I'm just wondering, what is the conflict of interest? Because I can think of three, just off the top of my head, 3 schools that have a parent that could potentially come in and do these. And I'm wondering, what is the conflict of interest? You don't want them handing out cards for their practice?
No, the only conflict of interest would be that we're having someone from the outside whose student goes to that school and then knows the parents and everyone else within that school, then them knowing information about the student and then being able to spread that information. Like I said, I wasn't 100% sure if that was allowed with the state of Kansas, if they allowed them to do same schools with where their student is currently attending.
And then help me understand too, why Kansas Department of Education, is the Department of Education would have a problem with us bringing somebody from the outside in?
No, KDHE, the Kansas Department of Health and Education.
Department of Health.
Sorry.
They would have a problem
They might.
without them being.
Because they're who the dental hygienists have to go through. They have training that they have to do prior to being able to actually go into the schools and do these screenings. So the hygienists, even though they fully can be a hygienist, they still have to go through training through Kansas, get the certificate to then do the screenings, and then they schedule their screenings through the state of Kansas. I don't know.
But they don't have the person hired
yeah.
to do it at the state of Kansas level.
Once again, I'm from the government,
Okay,
and I'm here to help.
Need this. You can't have it.
Yeah. All right, I'm Lori. I'm the nurse at the high school. So I was just going to review really quick just some of the projects that we've worked on over the school year, and we kind of work on every year, and then just give you a little picture of kind of our office visits and the things that we do in our clinics every day. So here you can see we have a layout of the office visits from the start of the school year through April 30th for each building. As you can see, the elementary schools there, we have She's has the highest office visit count for the school year. They have an aide there, of course. And then you have the 3 middle schools, with Spring Hill Middle School being the highest. And then the high school is listed last. And then also just to kind of point out, one of the benefits of having, a certified and, nurse in each building is being able to recognize emergency needs or the need to call 911. And this school year, we had 18 students that we either called 911 on or called parents and had them transport to the emergency room, and did that for 2 staff members also. And then down below there, we just kind of listed some of our acuity numbers. We have 3 students in the district with a personal nurse. We have 12 students in the district that have their blood sugars monitored. So the nurses all have like a school issued phone, and the parents give us permission to have access to the students' blood sugar numbers. And so we monitor those throughout the day, assist them at the high school. I'm kind of monitoring them and just reminding them, like, did you do this? Did you do this? At the elementary level, they're much more involved, of course. And then in the district, we pass about 80 daily prescription medications. That doesn't include, of course, your typical, headache medicine or stomachache medicine, and then about 87 daily treatment visits. That can be for hooking up hearing aids, that can be checking blood sugars, inhaler needs, tube feedings. We have several kiddos with tube feedings, and then lots of kiddos that need, at the elementary level, toileting assistance. And then here's just kind of a little update of the different projects that we work on. Of course, like Dr. Luttrell mentioned, we're Project Adam certified. So we have each school has their own team, Project Adam team, and we work with them throughout the year and do drills with them. We also make sure that at the beginning of the year, we get every staff member in the district checked off on hands-only CPR. We have a big event at the high school after opening ceremony, and everybody gets to go practice on they get a lecture from American Heart Association, and then they go do hands-on on a mannequin. Of course, we have AEDs in every building, some more than one, and we maintenance those throughout the school year. We also set up flu shot clinics for staff and their families. We work with local pharmacies and have them come in and offer flu shots in the fall. Of course, the district hearing and vision screening, we work with Rockhurst speech and language program students to assist with hearing screenings. They go to each building on certain days and help us screen those students, and then we rescreen their vision as they're getting done with their hearing. 4th and 5th graders, we still do their puberty lessons. At the high school, I do the STD lessons for the freshmen. Of course, at the beginning of the school year, we're collecting immunizations, health conditions, healthcare plans, and reporting critical information to students and coaches. Middle schools and high schools, we have a lot of concussion and injury management, collaborating with our counseling department. We do a blood drive at the high school. Sheila does 2 Fridays a month. They do the child find. They help with the screenings for child find. And then, of course, frequently we are a resource for staff. It's kind of an easy, can you look in my ear? Can you listen to my lungs? Stuff like that, they come in to see us for. So just kind of a quick review of what we do.
So can I just, let me just, I'm not quite as a stickler for the accuracy of data, but I'm as much of a data junkie as my colleague down there, John Chitwood. So looking at your numbers, I had no idea. So I'm just caveman math this thing out, right? For elementary schools, you're roughly seeing 1/10 of the population of the school district or of the school building every day, which works out to be about 5.87 students per hour per school hour.
Yeah.
And so thank you, and thank all of the staff that couldn't be here tonight. Would you mind thanking them for us?
Will do.
It's an incredible job.
Yeah.
And I'll say the 4th and 5th grade puberty lesson is the Lord's works. Good work on that one too.
Yes. Very good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight.
And really quick, while we're moving on, our seniors are currently gathered watching the sunset. So well wishes to them all gathered out there.
All right, moving on, 9.04 BIST next steps.
We have here at the city, we're going to this past couple school years, we've tried to implement in some of our schools, specifically some strategies that all teachers can benefit from in their classroom and work with in making sure that the classroom is safe and productive for all students. And so the BIST training program that's been put into place, we're going to hear some feedback from staff as to how that's gone in terms of where we've been with it, where we're at now, where next steps are going to be hopefully over the next year and into the future. So Dr. Robinson, I'll let you introduce your team.
Well, I'm going to very quickly introduce a little bit about the MTSS process and where BIST fits, because I think that was one of the questions I think Mr. Chitwood hit on at one of the previous meetings. And then I'm going to get out of the way and let the experts talk about BIST and what's really been going on in their building. So you've probably seen the MTSS pyramid from or triangle from a academic standpoint. This I stole actually from Mrs. Skibby's slides from the beginning of the year, so I can't take credit for it. But if you think about the MTSS triangle, it looks very much the same when you're talking behavior, social, emotional. The tier one, really, we're wanting every student in the building to have access to those items in tier one. You'll typically have somewhere between 10 and 20% of your students who need additional assistance to be successful, typically targeted assistance. And I'll show a little bit and I'll let them speak to it if you have questions. And then you will have somewhere around 5 to 7% of your kids who are going to need something more intensive. And that could be things in the building. It also is a nice lead in for Mrs. Shadows, who's following this presentation by talking a little bit about some of our specialized site-based classrooms throughout the district. So hopefully all of this connects and provides the board a better picture of what's going on. But one of the initial questions, and I know they're going to hit on it in more detail, is where does BIST fall? What about Leader and Me? Do they contradict each other? I'll let them speak to that. But what I would tell you is both of those are tier one. Those are things that we want all of our students in the district to have access to. You'll notice on the tier two side, you're talking more small group, typically more with people with a little bit of training, although it can be done by your classroom teachers. But normally you start to lean into your counselors if you have social workers in your building, other experts. And tier three is going to be even more individualized. If it's at the elementary level, I'll let them speak to what that looks like. But really, you're talking more one-on-one, individualized, could be behavior plans throughout the day. But tonight we're focusing more on tier one. And so we have the Prairie Creek team. This is first year of implementation of BIST. And so I'll let them share a little bit, and then I'll come back at the end and kind of give you an idea of where we think we should go next and answer any questions.
Thank you guys so much for having us tonight. I am Mrs. Skibby. I am the principal at Prairie Creek. With me, I have members of our BIST Vision team. So we started this journey back at the end of July, beginning of August. So I was looking for 10 members that could attend a week-long training with BIST. As a reminder, BIST stands for Behavior Intervention Support Team. So it's very much about the team approach to behavior management. So the group of individuals here tonight with me, I have Elizabeth Moore, Susie Wolf, Michelle Protera, Mandy Schultz, and Billy Pinkham. It's a variety of classroom teachers and support staff. So part of this, the philosophy of BIST, is in our kids' community. No matter what position you hold in our building, you are important in a student's life. So from custodian to nurse to classroom teachers to interventionists, we all play a role in supporting our students in our building. And it is all of our responsibility to help students and to address students when we see that they're out of bounds. So with the philosophy, BIST is very heavy into grace and accountability. And when we look at grace is actually, it's a twofold. It is an acronym that's used in BIST that stands for Giving Responsibility and Accountability to Children in Education.
Grace is also from all of us as a staff standpoint of we accept you students as you are with your problems, your pain, your need, all of those things. When we look on the accountability side, that is working with students to accept accountability. And so we're looking at helping them accept responsibility, helping them say, I did it, I'm sorry, I need help, it's a part of a problem in my life. So then we move on to 2 rules that are kind of the overarching things in BIST. It's never okay to be hurtful, and it's never okay to be disruptive. But we say on the flip side of that, it's always okay to be safe, respectful, and responsible. And then you break it down even more and you get to the 3 life goals. And the 3 life goals are I can make good choices even if I'm mad, sad, tired, anxious, overly excited. Put whatever emotion word you want in there. I can make good choices even if I experience an overwhelming feeling. The second one, I can be okay even if others are not okay. And the third one, I can do something even if I don't want to or even if it's hard. And the reason these are called life goals is because if you think as adults, how many things in life do we encounter that fit one of those things? There are things every day that I may not want to do, but I still have to do anyway. Every day as adults, we go through a range of emotions and we have to be able to control and to continue to make it through our day, even though we may be mad, sad, or anxious. And then the same thing in life, we may encounter people that are not okay, but I can still be okay even if someone else is not okay.
Hi, I'm Billy Pinkham. I'm the school counselor at Prairie Creek. I would say that the things that have made BIST the most successful in our school community is the common language and the consistency of the program. I think if you ask any child or any staff member in our school if they are okay, you would know that they are out of line, out of bounds, or not following expectations. And that is something that the teachers have done an amazing job of communicating with the kids, that if I walk up to you and I'm like, are you okay? Then they know that maybe they need to check themselves, take a deep breath, and they know that something is out of bounds for them. When you deal with a student who's maybe not okay, you say, I see you're struggling with, or can you explain this? And they can, hopefully they are learning to put into words what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and what they need from us and what they can do for themselves. We've spent many, many hours as a staff developing these common languages and our consistency so that it doesn't matter which staff member you are dealing with, they are giving you the same verbiage. I can also say that our students have now started to do this with each other. So if they notice a student is struggling or out of bounds, they will ask if they're okay. That student then checks themselves. So they're learning to be compassionate. They're learning to understand what someone else is going through. It's actually been a really amazing process to witness because, you know, elementary students have a tendency to think me, but now we're seeing them think we, and that's actually really cool. TAPS is another common language or a common term, which is total and perfect silence. The kids know if you say we need to do TAPS, that they need to put their heads down, they need to calm down, they need to take some deep breaths, and it's time to reset. So again, anyone in our community says that, the kids know what to do and the staff knows what to do. The other thing, it's been really important for all of our staff to do morning greetings with our students. And then we do temperature checks with the zones for every kid when they come in. It also gives us an opportunity to know maybe what kind of morning they've had or what we can kind of expect to see throughout the day. The continuum of BIST, again, it is a whole community understanding what is going on. If I'm saying, are you okay? And you are struggling with an expectation and you're out of bounds, then a kiddo knows that they can go, and we call them the recharge station, where they can go have a moment. They are by themselves and they can recharge, relax, reset. If that doesn't work, they continue to be out of bounds, then they go to a buddy room, whether it is on an on-grade level or an off-grade level. Again, you're taking them away from that situation where maybe they're struggling, where maybe they need more protection, and you're putting them in a place where they feel safe and supported. If the off-grade level buddy room doesn't work, then they go to the office and I have a recharge station right outside my office. Now, my job is not to fix the problem or why they might have gone to that recharge station. My job is to help them get calm, get regulated, and then they go back through the continuum back to their class. So they would never go from my office space right back to their classroom. They would go back to their buddy room, back to their off-grade buddy room, on grade, and then back to their classroom recharge station. And you fix you fix it where it was broken is what, again, we say in the community. They fix it with whoever, whether it's in the lunchroom, they fix it in the lunchroom. If it's in specials, they fix it in specials. So you fix it where it's broken so you can repair those relationships. We put protections in place for those kiddos to be successful. And I will say BIS has helped us as a Prairie Creek community know what is expected of everyone involved, whether it's the student or whether it's the staff. I would say from last year to this year, the stress level in our building has decreased tremendously. And I think a lot of that has to do with the consistency and the common language. If those kiddos continue to struggle, that's when we move on to a BIS plan where they have special things where specific to them, which will then lead us into one of those things is skill-based coaching. And Michelle is going to touch base on that. But that was just a really brief, quick overview of kind of how the BIS program works in the continuum. But I will say that it has helped our community a lot at Prairie Creek.
Hi, I'm Michelle Protera and I teach first grade at Prairie Creek. And as Billy mentioned, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the skill-based coaching portion of the BIS program. This is something that we've actually been able to implement already this year with several of our students. The students that are taking part in the skill-based coaching are students who have been identified as missing a skill. And these are the students who have also been identified as needing a little bit more intense coaching, practice, and one-on-one guidance with how to develop and practice the skill. The first step is really identifying the student and then the adult or teacher meeting with the student to discuss with them kind of what is it that we are working on, and then together coming up with this coaching plan. So for instance, if it's a student who is struggling with emotional regulation, they are working on, I can still do my work even if I am mad. I can still make good choices even if I'm angry. That's kind of the overarching what it is that they're working on. And then in the plan, you're able to come up with 2 or 3 questions that will allow them to really practice what will it look like when they're struggling and doing so kind of more in an inbound sort of way. So for a student who maybe is struggling emotionally, one of their questions might be, what will you say when you're mad? Or where will you go when you're mad? And the answer that you and your student come up with together is always very simple. A lot of times it's, I can still do my work even if I'm mad. I can still make good choices. And they repeat the same answer to the adult who then becomes their coach. So usually they meet with their coach first thing in the morning, kind of proactively to set them up for success. You go over your little coaching plan. Okay, what are we working on today? It's always that same skill that they're missing. You ask them those same questions. Okay, what are you going to do if you're upset? What are you going to do? And you get those same answers. And then they have a secondary coach that they meet with, usually a different time throughout the day. A lot of times these students we've identified a time in the day that we know that they're going to struggle. So we will proactively plan a time for them to go have a coaching session with another adult, maybe prior to that transition. And that adult will ask the very same questions, they will get the very same answers. So it feels very redundant and repetitive, but that's the point. We are kind of creating that muscle memory with the student so that once they are in the throes of one of these instances with their behavior, they're able to trigger their brain and say, oh yeah, I can still do this even though I'm mad. I can still do my work. I can still follow directions. And as I mentioned, this is something that we've already been able to start implementing with some of our students, and we already are seeing a lot of the benefits. These kids, I know the ones that I coach, you just see the confidence growing and the pride and just that quick check-in, which that was a concern for staff members. Okay, now we have to coach kids. How long is this going to take? When am I going to find the time? And now that we're in the routine, it really is a few minutes that you meet with this kid. And not only are you coaching them on the skill that they're missing, but you're building a connection. So they're connected not only with their classroom teacher, but oftentimes with another classroom teacher, another adult in the building. And it just creates that belonging that a lot of these students are maybe lacking. So I think the benefits that we are seeing already are just incredible with this program. So
I was going to jump in and add a little bit of clarification. So when we say a missing skill, we jump back to those life goals of I can manage an overwhelming feeling, I can be okay even if others are not, or I can do something even if I don't want to or it's hard. Also to kind of wrap back around and tie some of these things together, like Dr. Robinson was talking about with the MTSS tier. So when we think academics, when a student has a missing skill, we don't just go, good luck, best of luck to you. We wrap around them and we support them with intervention. That can be with our tier 2 interventions, or that could be tier 3 interventionists. But when they're missing a skill, like if they can't add 2 + 2, we wrap around that and we teach that skill. Behavior is the same way. If a student's missing a skill, you have to wrap around and to be able to teach through skills-based coaching or working with the child on strategies that they can use. So a lot of times when we think about overwhelming feelings, we'll work with a lot of our kids on breathing strategies or techniques, or utilizing, we're really big right now. We have a lot of students that like textured stickers, and to be able to rub over that and take deep breaths helps with the calming nature. So we're trying to give them a strategy to help get them to a place where they can be regulated again. It can also be, we have a few students that use the saying, the mantra, stop, think, and then act. So again, you're teaching them, and then in the hopes of lots of repetitions that eventually they get to that point where they put that into play when they're experiencing a big emotion or that they don't want to do something, they're able to think about the coaching and then put what we're working into play before they make a bigger problem.
Okay, I'm Elizabeth Moore. I'm the reading interventionist. And so to kind of bring it all together, this works together to empower the student, and the zones is a way to give awareness to how they're feeling and their emotions. The leader in me is what develops life skills. And then the BIST is the structure and the accountability piece that we need that promotes that emotional safety and that growth mindset to do all of that we have set in place.
I'm Susie Wolf, second grade teacher at Prairie Creek. And to talk a little bit more about Leader in Me and kind of how that fits together with BIST, the key features of Leader in Me are, the first and foremost, it's a focus on the whole child. So it emphasizes academic achievement alongside personal and social emotional growth. And what Leader in Me provides to teachers is basically a way to provide explicit instruction on character education, which is really the foundation that the kids have to even be able to answer those questions that go with skill-based coaching, and to have that forethought and think about what's out of bounds and what's inbounds. We've got also, with another feature of Leader in Me, is the 7 habits. So we are able to teach the students those 7 habits, such as be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and think win-win. So kids are moving from those private victories and that independence and learning those basic skills to moving outwards towards interdependence and that public victory. And all that also goes hand in hand with that skill-based coaching and a lot of the things that we talk about with BIST. The kids also have leadership opportunities, and so they're encouraged to take on leadership roles in the classroom and throughout the school, such as classroom jobs and student-led conferences and STUCO. Also, kids are able to practice goal setting and tracking. They're able to set personal goals, and we teach them how to do that, as well as academic goals. And then they use tools like leadership binders to learn how to track that progress. And what we're seeing is basically pretty much a big school culture shift. So it builds a shared leadership model where staff, students, and families work together to create a positive and proactive culture. So all of it really works together, and it gives teachers this not only gives teachers a common language, but also Leader Me does as well. And those zones get pulled in. I have conversations with kids where I'm pulling from all three of those areas when I'm talking to them, and they all connect together.
So, do you have any questions for us?
Well, first I'm going to start out, which is some of you folks were in transition meetings when we popped in for Appreciation Week last week. So for the ones that I didn't get to see in person, I appreciate you and thank you so much. And it's really gratifying to see what you've done here. It's words have meaning, and until we share understanding of what those words mean, we can't communicate. And so I love that BIST is bringing this to students, to staff, to everyone. So great stuff. The question I would have is, so now that we're all on board, what's now our onboarding process going to look like as our new baby teachers, as the term is tossed out there? How do this become part of their ethos and make us better, stronger, faster?
So it's a great transition to where do we go next with this? Because I think we're still a ways away from BIST being, we were talking about it before the meeting, being part of our culture and something that we just do. So I'll backtrack slightly, and I should give Cindy Jados credit, because really the vision of bringing BIST was her and Rachel Mills and probably a number of other people 3 years ago. In part, you'll notice that two of our schools currently, our two middle schools, are being paid for out of our TIP grant, which is, I know with grant funding being questioned right now, I would tell you it's part of our annual KSD allotment. TIP is Targeted Improvement Plan. So it's addressing an area that we either have a concern or want to make sure we're getting out in front of. And originally started because we had some concerns about over-identifying students from special populations, both special ed and other populations, showing up in our discipline referrals more frequently than our other students. So that's why it started at the middle school. Prairie Creek was kind of the guinea pig and piloting because of some things that popped up last year, and how could we help them better address it. So we started with Spring Hill Middle and Forest Spring. Spring Hill Middle finishes their second year, which the initial implementation piece is typically a 2-year process. Although BIST will continue to tell you that there may be a need for a third year of support with them. But we would have those, they would be finishing, Forest would have 1 more year. And if you're following the 2-year model, Prairie Creek would have 1 more year. Our recommendation right now would be to bring Woodland Spring on board to finish out the middle school piece, and then to do some work next year with our elementary team. We've got a number of different behavior plans across the district and how our buildings are operating, and really to sit down with them. This was part of the work we did with a group of teacher representatives and district administrators a couple of weeks ago, but really to come together with our elementary team and build a more comprehensive plan, that MTSS triangle, to make sure we're consistent at all 5 of our elementaries and what that looks like. And then to talk about at the end of next year, bringing additional elementaries on board. But next year, and you'll get a chance to approve this down the road because we'll have to bring the contract back to you. But our recommendation would be continue Prairie Creek, continue Forest Spring, add Woodland. And we're discussing right now with leadership at Spring Hill Middle School and with our BIST consultants what support would look like. If we stay with a once a month pattern for them next year, the cost would be pretty similar to what we're paying for them. So it would be a little bit of an addition for us, but that's something we'll continue to work through. But timeline wise, I always want to move as fast as possible, but I think there's some benefits at times of moving as slowly as necessary. And I think with our elementary teams, we have a better chance of making this sustainable. If we get all on the same page on some of the other components before we bring BIST in. The other piece I started asking our consultants about is at some point, we've got to be able to sustain this without BIST consultants. And so we're starting the conversation about what that could look like down the road. Can we train others within our system? You ask about onboarding. There will be a point where we have to rely on our own staff to do some of those things, and we know it's coming, but I still think we're a ways away. I don't know if that clearly answers your question, but.
It's an answer.
Okay.
I had another question for you, Dr. Robinson. So what would be the long-term funding plan for it? Like if that grant does go away, and how are we going to add these additional schools? How is the funding gonna?
Yeah, I don't anticipate that grant going away, and I'll look at Cindy because the way it's, I think the only way it would go away is if we identified a different need within our system that we needed to shift those funds. It really is part of your annual special education allotment that comes. It just comes in a lump sum that has to be specifically targeted towards an improvement piece or a professional development need. Am I answering that correctly, Cindy? But I don't anticipate that that would go away.
And so that would fund the additional schools that we're looking.
It will fund 2 schools. The other school, right now, we're paying for Prairie Creek out of general fund.
Okay, but how?
So and that's where I think we've got to stagger the implementation a little bit. As those schools need less support, the middle schools that are coming on, you'd be able to shift the money from the TIP grant to cover additional schools. Does that make sense? So you'd stagger them out to where one would come off as another one would come
Okay,
off.
so like Green Hill Middle would come off and we'd add on Woodland to the Forest.
Yes.
Stagger.
But what you're paying for is the consultation piece from them.
And I don't know, Jimmy,
We're gonna get to a
do you want to
point
speak to
that
what your monthly?
You're actually paying for the training, because each
Right.
building has a team that helps implement that. So you're paying for that initial training for that building level team. And then you're paying for that contract, that monthly support from the BIS consultant who comes out and supports.
but
that.
eventually we wouldn't be paying for any of that.
No.
So there won't be a cost.
No.
You get 3 or 4 years down the road.
The only cost you could, if you decide you want to send others to that summer training, like you could, small groups, like you asked about sustaining training, building level teams could decide to do that also, as to help with new staff, or we could support in district. So yes, eventually that would drop out and it would just take the matter of time of what rate you wanted that to drop out at. So.
But I think the funding kind of answers my question. It's a 5-year implementation,
Yeah.
roughly.
The other thing they have started to discuss is if we bring on more schools, slightly prorating our cost to, which you would anticipate, because there may be some overlap that we could do in training and consultation.
And how are you choosing these schools that you're going to implement? Like, why are you choosing Forest Spring over Timber Sage, or why are you choosing Woodland over?
You want to speak to that?
Yeah.
We chose Spring Hill Middle because when we looked at the data initially over time, and we went back to about 2017 forward, and we were looking at that data for behavior, OSS, ISS, and seclusion, restraint, all of those things. We were looking at that SPED data. And like Dr. Robinson said, it encompassed a majority of our SPED students. So we wanted to see better outcomes. Spring Hill Middle School was our first place that had the greatest need with that. So that was where we started. The goal then was to impact moving upward. In that, at the time we did that, we only had Spring Hill Middle School and Woodland Spring. So then we started looking at Forest Spring because we needed a behavior classroom at the middle school level. And that was in preparation to kind of help with that, and thinking of that idea of middle school and then moving outward, either up high school or elementaries if need be. But our biggest layer of outcomes we wanted to impact were our secondary students, middle and high school. So.
Okay, so that actually goes right into my next question I had. What specific data do we now have showing reductions in the behavior?
Same data. So we would have our ESI, seclusion and restraint data, anything that our principals report in kiosks, which is our discipline data, and that as well, so that we can show that. And then they also have their individual building data that many of them keep on like office referrals or additional behaviors. And there, as a part of the buildings that do, all of our buildings do some form of data collection with that. Your middle schools and high schools rely heavily on your Skyward information system. And then your elementaries rely heavily on just their data that they keep within that with their office referrals, behaviors, et cetera. So.
Okay, so we are showing a reduction.
Yes, we are.
By implementing this.
And actually a pretty significant reduction. And our biggest outcome, like we said when we started, was really looking at, because the TIP grant targeted those students with, who are identified as in the need of special education with disabilities. That was who we wanted to impact, but the impact has gone beyond that, so.
And then, I don't remember which one of you said this, that the climate has gotten so much better. I think it may have been you, Bill. Yeah, which is great. I love that it's reducing your stress level. Are we seeing improvements in academic performance as well, or?
That's still to be determined as we're looking at like state assessment data, Fast Bridge data and stuff. I would expect that fully to be so that once you have behaviors in place, academics will definitely increase. So I expect to see that over the next few years with our data.
I do have one more, and Dr. Robinson, I don't want you to put you on the spot and feel like you have to answer, but one of the things that was asked for in negotiations was a focus at our level on behaviors. And so I kind of get back to, at some point, is this timeline meeting with all of our teachers' expectations?
So I'll give my opinion, and if Elizabeth wants to chime in.
Sorry, I did.
No, it's a good question. Out of negotiations last year, one of the things we agreed to do was to sit down with a group of administrators and a group of teachers selected by the association and to really discuss just what you're talking about. What are the behavior needs? We did that in April. And one of the biggest things we came to at the elementary level was there's a need to put the larger framework that BIST or any other program would support. What is it that we want in all of our schools? That's the work we'd really like to do together next year. I understand where you're going, that speeding it up makes sense. I think the other piece right now is you've got some structures in place that if we're going to speed it up, probably need to come away. And I think that's a piece that our full elementary team with both our building principals, but also with some teachers from each of our buildings need to have a part in looking at how do we do that? How do we do it most effectively?
And just to clarify where I'm going, yes, obviously, I think speeding it up would be great, but to your point, sometimes going slow, I'm just concerned that we have buy-in across the district. Hey, this is the direction we're going. We have met the commitment that we made to you to look at it, and it's coming to a school near you and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
That's my real concern is, if it takes 5 years and everybody's happy for those 5 years, I feel great. If it takes 5 years and everybody's upset that it's not at my school, then I don't feel great. You know what I mean?
I think one of the things I appreciate about the relationship we have with the Spring Hill Education Association is the monthly meetings that we have and being able to consistently talk about issues just like this. And I don't want to speak for them, but I'll speak from my perspective. I want to make sure if we're going to devote these kind of resources to implement something new, that we're going to do it in a manner that it's still going to be here 7 to 10 years from now, that it's sustainable, something that we're building the foundation of it to where it doesn't matter if I'm still here or somebody else is in this role or if Jenny moves on or whatever, that the system we're building is sustainable. It's not person dependent. It's what's best for our kids. I think taking next year to put all of those other pieces together, to work with Courtney Weber coming into a new role, to work with teaching and learning, to work with our elementary principals, I think has the best chance of it being more sustainable. Part of my reason for recommending Woodland right now is not because Woodland has the greatest need, but as you have students who finish at Prairie Creek and transition into Woodland, I want them to transition into a system that already has some of those supports in place, and that for a student moving there, it's not a completely different process. I think we have the best chance of those students being successful as they transition from elementary to middle school. So would I love to go faster? Yes, I'd love to come to you and say, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and jump in and do all of them. But I think we would be devoting a lot of resources to something that we'd still then have to backtrack and build in those other pieces to make it sustainable. It's a long way to.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
And I trust that if I'm off base, Elizabeth will kick me or something from back here. Will tell me.
I was looking to see if she.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. We want to make sure we're doing something that's good for kids, but also gives staff the strategies and sports they need to feel successful in their classroom as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you guys. Thank you for coming in tonight. Thanks for all the information. All right, moving on to 9.05 site-based classroom presentation.
Following up from the BIST presentations, we have Mrs. Jottles here who's also going to now focus on some specific programs that have been in place at some of our schools that address certain types of special needs students, and what she's going to just kind of bring everyone up to date on those programs, where they're housed, what their goals are, as well as, you know, a new one that we're looking at going to be bringing on this next fall. So Ms. Jottles, I'll let you take it and share with us what you have.
All right, thank you. What I'm going to be talking to you about are site-based classrooms, and those are for students who are identified as having a disability and who receive special education services. So when we talked about BIS, that's an intervention for all students. Those are, you know, for general education students, students who do have disabilities and all. So these are our classrooms, and they are for our students who, okay, gotta get, sorry. Let me get acclimated here. There we go. Who receive special education services are identified as having a disability. One of the things you've heard me say before is talking about the continuum of services. And one of the things that we are required through IDEA is to provide, as a school district, a continuum of services for our students, which range from the least restrictive to the most restrictive. And so as you look at this diagram, we know, like I said, all of our students are general education students first and foremost, but we are required to have that continuum of services. So as you kind of look through there, you can see one of the things we also have to have is to provide those services for our students in the least restrictive environment. So we look, and as you go down that pyramid there, you see it going from a least restrictive to the most restrictive. And so we can't just jump. We don't want to just jump from one to the other. We have to follow that continuum. And we want to say, we want to make sure this is our best fit, because as our goal is to provide that free, appropriate public education, or access to a free, appropriate public education, we have to do it in the environment that fits best with our students. So to that end, we have site-based classrooms, and those fall in that continuum. If you look, we have from our general education to what are probably our out-of-district placements or our day school placements. So that falls under probably a little bit more before that. We also always want to presume that a child has what's probably there, and I want to use the term, we're making educational decisions that fall in the assumption that they are in their what we call the least dangerous assumption. So that by saying we're not just jumping from here to the most restrictive. We want to assume competence, and we want to say, hey, this is the least dangerous. By doing this, we think this is probably our level of the student can be successful. We want to assume competence, and we want to go from there. That's why we want to have that continuum, if that kind of makes sense. I lost my term here and probably should put my glasses on. That'd probably help me a little bit more, but anyway, so as we look at that, when we looked at Spring Hill in the past, we were good with general education. We had resource supports, we had push-in services, but we were kind of taking a jump of going straight to out-of-district types of placements. So we wanted to look at our classrooms. We did some kind of review of what we had and what was available. One of our classrooms, and Dr. Lachild asked me to talk about, and I want to talk about kind of all, one of our classrooms are our BEST classrooms, and don't confuse that with BIS, because now, you know, we're in special education world, we get all these acronyms going here, but BEST are classrooms that are traditionally what are called life skills classrooms. And our teachers had created a name, Building Essential Skills Together. And that's really the focus of these classrooms. So students in here, and I'm not going to read through all of this for you, but typically they are students who have intellectual or developmental disabilities, a little bit more severe. So with that, they could have some other factors. They probably need an alternative curriculum, or their academics need to be taught in the context of life skills or a little bit more functional skills. So these are the skills in the classroom. These classrooms are focused on students kind of preparing them for what are the essential skills that they will need. Some things may have multiple disabilities. There may be augmentative communication devices, things such as PECs, which are your personal exchange communication systems, which is like a picture. It's like a picture communication board. Some of those are just the low tech. It's a board with pictures. To the high tech could be more iPad with different things with that. So goals are really developing academic and behavioral independence for those students. One of the things, because you remember I did that continuum just a few minutes ago, we want to make sure, though, that doesn't mean sometimes our students in those classrooms are on an alternative curriculum. They may be on an alternative using different materials. They may be focusing just on those functional skills. However, they're in general education activities and classes as much to whatever extent is available for that student. They typically are educationally, medically diagnosed as having intellectual disability, may have troubles with understanding new information, communication, social skills, or any of these other areas. Currently, our elementary program is located at Timber Sage Elementary. Our middle school is at Woodland Spring, and our high school is at Spring Hill High School. And those are probably, our life skills classrooms have been the longest standing classrooms we've had in the district. When we look at those program and classroom goals, this is probably our one area we can say we probably are developing more of a program. And a program means that we have that preschool or kindergarten through 12th grade. So that's where we kind of say program. You'll hear me say site-based classroom, because that means that we just probably have it at just one level, two levels. It's not really cohesive yet. We want to get there. We want that to be, but you'll hear site-based more than that. And that just means it's probably at whatever those levels are. The end goals of those classrooms, communication, literacy, problem solving, really focusing on that self-care, self-determination, advocacy, and independence. Those are probably the ultimate goals of those types of classrooms. Some of the things that you may see, you'll see some structured teaching, you may see physical prompts, you may see a teacher using hand-over-hand teaching. There may be very concrete, very hands-on learning, things based on kind of real-world learning. You may see working on telling time. You may see working on adding money, subtracting money, counting money, doing different things like that. You'll see those skills that will be based into more of a functional, real-life type of learning. You'll see things like sight words. You'll see working on reading signs in the community. So those skills that will really assist in being more independent in community and life. One of our other classrooms is our RISE classroom, and that's Reaching Independence Through a Structured Environment. And that is a classroom that focuses on autism or complex communication. And note that just because a student has autism, we know that autism is a spectrum. So just a diagnosis of autism or just that, our students in our RISE classrooms are probably on the little bit more severe range of the autism spectrum. In fact, they're impacted by some of the parts of their autism. So that they are typically most often nonverbal, because we know autism is a communication disability. They have limited communication skills, or they use augmentative communication as well. Again, they have intensive support. They may have some other behaviors in there as well. General education activities, again, as much as possible. They may have an alternative curriculum, but again, it's individualized. It depends on what the student's needs are with that. Currently, our elementary RISE classroom is at Spring Hill Elementary and middle school is at Spring Hill Middle. And we do not have a high school RISE classroom at this point in time. Programming focuses really on communication, social communications interactions, literacy, reducing the impact of restricted behaviors. Sometimes there are some restricted behaviors for students who have an autism disability. Improved functional skills, self-determination, advocacy, and independence. When we look at the structure of those classrooms, it's really built on the kind of that triangle or that pyramid that you see there. The bottom layer is that physical structure. The whole classroom, everything is developed around that physical structure of the classroom. Schedules, then work systems, routines, visual strategies, all of those help support our students. So the schedules are designed to help to support that student's learning and to help guide them throughout their day. Provides any consistency, predictability of routine. Work systems help the student then to work through what needs to be visually cued or what needs to be understandable for that student, helping them to work independently is how those work systems create. And then again, any visual strategies such as a visual schedule or a visual task sheet or anything with that. And then sometimes it can just be the visual structure of materials that are used in our classrooms. When we look at the structures, you may see there's a heavy reliance in our RISE classroom on what's called the VB map. And what that is, it's a test of language, and then it breaks it into basic categories. You'll see I listed some of those there. It uses some terms that we're not always as familiar with. Manned, which it talks about if a student is manding, that means that they're requesting. Tact is labeling and so on. And so then we also work on just that whole kind of continuum there. As we move through that language functioning, those are the steps you have to go through typically to have good communication. Another classroom we have is our Bronco TIES classroom, and TIES stands for Transition to Independence, Employment, and Success. That's our 18 to 21 classroom. Those students also have intellectual disabilities. They are typically students who for us, they have graduated from Spring Hill High School or they have completed their 12th grade year. Students who have intellectual disabilities are able to continue on through the age of 21 in school to the year they turn 21. So this provides additional support for them, and it's to help them to transition into life, community, work, the world of work, and different activities with that. So that's what this classroom does. They may receive some community-based instruction. They may be doing some job skills, having some job coaching, working in the community. They may be attending CLEAR classes at Johnson County Community College. So they have a variety of goals for their independence. So location of that right now is at Spring Hill High School. So that classroom is really just the tie-in of those three areas of independence in the following: community, success, and workplace, and then building the skills to have that independence. They may be experienced like shopping, planning, preparing food, going to the local food pantry or volunteering there, expanding some of their career types of things, doing any type of community-based instruction, how to do different things in our community. Classroom, they are, like I said, they have IEP goals, and their objectives are based upon what will best support them as they move through that. Additional work, collaboration, again with CLEAR, also with the Johnson County Developmental Disabilities Organization, and then also working with the Kansas Vocational Rehab Training, or PREETS. So, and we were excited. We found out we had 2 students in the past and this is for students in this classroom can work with PREETS, but any student with a disability can work with PREETS. And we went from Spring Hill having on average about 2 students working with PREETS. We had 30 students work with PREETS last year. So that was a nice increase, and that helped us to show that we're getting our kids more involved in different things and getting ready for the world of work. So support's a need. Ideal is classroom that we have been working on last several years to design and build, and that is a middle school level behavior. We looked at, and looking at our data, that was the area where we probably needed the most support. Now, I was going to say ideally, ideally we would have a middle, elementary, high school at some point, but right now middle is where we felt that was our most area of impact with that. And that focuses on behavioral social and emotional. Students in that classroom will have behaviors that significantly interfere with learning. Again, note the difference between a kiddo that has behavior who's not identified as receiving special education services. So this is for students who have an IEP identified as receiving special education services because they have a disability, which is impacting this. They could be manifested in several ways: aggression, anxiety, school phobias. They, again, involved in general education classroom and activities whenever possible, with any modifications needed to meet their needs. Location for that will be Forest Spring next year. And you heard about BIST. We knew that would be a good support for that building as they geared up to be ready to support a classroom with 4 students. Program class goals: inclusion to the fullest extent possible. Again, reduced impact of behaviors, self-determination, advocacy, independence, and then generalization of skills. Basic principles that classroom are built on is the focus on social, emotional, behavioral needs, a highly structured environment, individualized schedules, routines, intentional procedures, trained, committed staff. Some basic information about all site-based classrooms. So all of our site-based classrooms, teachers who serve in those classrooms must hold Kansas teaching and special education licensure. They have to be on a waiver in pursuit of special education licensure in Kansas. Any students that are served through with intellectual disabilities, the teacher has to have what we call a low incidence or a comparable license in Kansas. And then any additional training or supports for teachers or classrooms throughout each year on an ongoing basis. Do note each year staff are trained in CPI. They have CPI training in there. They have certification in that. And then we just kind of went through and listed some of the other trainings that are available for our student. We do have the support of TASM. We have a regional rep who works with us, and we send staff to those trainings. There are also other trainings and conferences that our staff attend. When we think about the curriculum and the materials, our students, like I've said, are always general education students first and foremost. They just need some additional supports or things to help them to access their gen ed curriculum. So we follow the Kansas State Education Standards for each grade level. And then academic IEP goals are based on each student's individual and unique instructional needs. So when we look at materials, that's kind of a listing there. We use district materials, and then we have some other, as you kind of go down the list, you become more intensive with what those materials are. So BIST, I kind of put that because not every school necessarily has BIST, but we know that Forest Spring will is one of our buildings. Keep wanting to click this like it's slides. So kind of a big overview of quite a few things there. Tried not to drag too much on there. Any questions? It's good if there's no questions. So
Thank you. Thank you, Sid.
Thank you.
I feel like I just drank through a fire hose. That was a lot of information. Thank you.
It's like my day sometimes.
Thank you, Cindy. Let's recess for till 9:10.
Some stretches.
Or rejoin, resume, sorry. Yeah, wow, I was getting ahead of myself there, wasn't I? No. Out of respect to these professionals that have been sitting here enduring this. I think we move on now to 9.06, right? The professional learning communities, PLCs.
Yes, and we have Dr. Smith, and she has a core of teachers here tonight. One of the things that's requested, this is our 6th year of professional learning communities within the district, which is really the foundation for everything that we do. It has been in place for a while and is embedded within our culture. And so tonight we were just going to have Dr. Smith and some of the teachers she was able to convince to come tonight and share some of their thoughts on how PLCs work and the benefit. Turn over to her and let her take it from here. Thank you, Dr. Smith and your crew.
Thank you. I have a great team with me tonight. I have our team from Spring Hill Elementary, our 2nd grade team, Dustin Kirkpatrick, Shelby Pelkey, and Aaron Kuchar. Our 1st grade team from Prairie Creek Elementary, I've got Michelle Protera, Kelly Mugridge, and Cindy Eaton. And then I have our high school art teachers here with us tonight, Cindy Katz, Catherine Hapke, and Abby Stahlbomber. So we do have the opportunity to talk a little bit about professional learning communities, which we've had in place in the district for several years. And the primary purpose of our professional learning communities is to allow our staff to focus in on improving student learning through a collaborative structure and use our student data to really determine what are the best steps for instruction and perhaps intervention, so we can make sure that all students master their grade level skills and course level skills and concepts. And just like Dr. Robinson did earlier, I brought this team of experts because I would really like for them to speak to what they do specifically with their Wednesday morning collaborative time. So we've been very fortunate as we've gone on this journey of professional learning communities to have support from the Board of Education to have a protected time in our schedule where our teachers can collaborate together, where they can analyze student data and discuss what they need to do instructionally to support our students. And so if you're looking at our academic calendar, you'll notice we have several Wednesday mornings blocked off where our teacher teams are meeting together to engage in the work of professional learning communities. So all of our teachers here tonight are going to talk to you a little bit about what they do with that time and why that's such a benefit to them.
Hello. So our PLC work goes kind of in a 4-phase process. There's plan, do, refine, and act. We're going to talk a little bit more about each of those in a little more detail as far as what we do. The plan portion starts with really backwards planning, thinking about what things we want our students to be able to accomplish by the end of those units, thinking about what standards we want them to be able to be exposed to or to be able to master throughout the units that we're teaching. So we get to look at our units a few weeks ahead in order to kind of plan for what is coming up in our instruction. We can look at our sequence of learning, thinking about what they've already worked on in the grade before, what they'll be able to need to do in the year after, and then what we want them to be able to master or be able to do by the end of the year. And like I said, we are looking at our standards there to see what standards are being taught throughout that unit, what things we might want to add in as far as standards to expose them to, or what standards they should have mastered by the end of that instruction. By being able to look ahead at the curriculums that we have, we can identify any misconceptions, thinking about previous years of instruction, what we've seen with students, to be able to put a plan in place to address those before they become an issue. And then we're able to look more at like what our curriculum includes, what resources it has to add to our instruction for students.
And the next phase is the, whoops, did I go the wrong way? Sorry, the do phase of our process. So that's where we really implement the instruction and the assessment. We look ahead and see what instructional strategies we want to use. We also collaborate throughout the whole teaching of it as well, and see if there's other instructional strategies that we want to bring in, and also pre-plan for those. We think about what scaffolding students might need and which students might need scaffolding, and then extensions as well, which students are going to need extensions that would go beyond what we're teaching, and then
try to plan for those, and also look at our active learning to bring in some different things instead of just sitting there and doing worksheets. If we wanted to bring in like a Kagan strategy, what we might want to do with that. Then the next phase is the refine phase. This is where we sit down and examine the assessment data after we've given the assessment. We really think about who demonstrated mastery or what they did well on the assessment, look at what areas they need to improve on and how we can improve those areas this year through small groups, and for next year, what we can do different, and then look at assessing instructional strategies and see if we need to change anything there.
So I wanted to bring up the Prairie Creek team. They have some really great examples of how they're tracking the progress of students with just one specific reading informational standard to give you an idea of how they're analyzing student assessment data.
Okay, so this is a quick little snapshot of at the very beginning, maybe after 4 or 5 weeks, we look at anything that was taught in kindergarten, and then we look at what we have continued to teach and add on to the phonics skills for first grade. We use a 3-2-1 based off of a proficiency scale. A 3 is going to be skills that have, or students that have met the standard. A 2 would be the student is approaching the standard, and then a 1, the student would not be at the standard. And so we've used a 3 is green, a 2 is yellow, and then a 1 is red. And so we are able to look at what the skill is. So we have our short vowels, so short A, short E, I, O, and U. And we're able to group the students based on where they are with their own individual learning needs. And then as we look at a beginning of the year, we've obviously continued to teach more phonics skills. And we can look at our data, and our goal is for it to continue to be all green. We even have an example of like a BD reversal over there at the beginning. We are able to look and see, okay, this is still developmentally appropriate, but what can we do to help those students continue to show mastery of that? And so that's kind of like a middle of the year example. And then as we continue to move on to the end of the year, this is our current data. As we look at it for all of the first grade phonics skills that are supposed to be taught, obviously you can see some students that might have IEPs and they're going to have more red areas, and those have already been being addressed by the IEP goals. We have some students that still have some yellow, so those might be students that are working with our reading interventionist. And then most of them have now turned green because we've been able to group them based on what they need.
The final stage of our PLC work is to act. If students did not master something on the assessment, we have PLC time to dig deep and figure out why. And then we list the students who didn't meet the standard. We plan tiered intervention for them during the PLC time. Also at this time, we can pull an interventionist to collaborate with us on research-based practices. And then finally, we set a goal and schedule a follow-up meeting to see how our intervention has worked out for these kids. And we at Spring Hill Elementary follow these 4 phases for every unit in math and every unit in reading.
So I think it's a little bit easier sometimes to think about what a typical grade level that's going to teach English language arts and math, what they might be doing with this collaborative Wednesday time that the board has prioritized and protected for our teachers. But I also wanted to bring in one of our elective departments to kind of give you an idea of, well, what does that mean though if you're teaching a content area like art? So I'm going to invite my high school art teacher team up to talk a little bit about what that Wednesday time looks like for them from the elective perspective. I know, it's late, we're rhyming, I mean.
Okay, I'm Abby Stahlbaumer. I teach art, all 3 of us, you know that. We are the Spring Hill High School art department, and we would like to share with you some of the outcomes from our PLC, what we've achieved. One class that we all teach is fundamentals of art. The class that's an introductory for attendance into all of our other additional electives like painting, drawing, ceramics, and graphic design. A shared goal for our art students is to, number one, keep an open mindset and develop skills. Number two, build confidence and perseverance to refine their work. And three, to creatively brainstorm and use observation to analyze the world around them.
So I'm Sydney Katz. I teach the ceramics classes. One of the awesome things about our department is that we all teach art fundamentals. So that's kind of what we do most of our PLC time in, is working on how to make sure that our fundamentals are moving seamlessly throughout the semester. We do things like we use See, Think, Me, We structure to teach art history, analyzing artworks, things like that. We do skills practice, drawing assignments. They work on some of those, seeing, drawing from observation, working on value, kinds of skills-based development. We also have a very consistent approach to late work, redos, feedback, critiques, that kind of stuff. We're very much so all on the same page, and we all kind of approach this in the same way with our own little razzle-dazzle here and there. Previously, the way we used to do critiques in the art fundamentals classes is that we did them at the end of the semester, and we found that then you just have critique happening and not feedback happening. So we kind of restructured. We might still do a little bit of critique at the end of a unit, but we try to do more in the middle of a project, critique and feedback, so that we can catch them where they're maybe starting to fall a little bit and make some improvements to their projects mid-work. We've also pretty much gotten rid of all late penalties. We just encourage the kids to continue to work until they have a good result, building those high skill levels and getting rid of that I can't do art mentality. It's all about building that skill. I say you run a marathon, you can't do it in one day. You got to continue to build that skill level. We focus less on the grades. We focus more on just building the love for art.
So for students with a strong interest and foundational skills in art, we offer material choices that challenge their compositional strategies. For example, one student created monochromatic portrait in colored pencil, another used white charcoal on black paper, focusing on highlights versus shadows, and the others were pushed to use expressive facial features of complex backgrounds. This is an example of our See, Think, Me, We bell work, and this is from Project Zero Harvard. And basically what this does is it allows students to use their observational skills to kind of inform their own knowledge without knowing anything else about the artwork. So for example, I would start with, what do you see? And they would list things like shapes, colors. They couldn't tell me what they could guess. Maybe they're going to read the words, like they're going to say that, okay, that says Concert House Berlin, it says Safe Passage. Then you would go to think. So I see orange and black. I think those are life jackets. Why do we use life jackets? And they kind of are starting to think about, okay, use that to prevent me from drowning. Then we go to me. What are my associations? Well, my grandpa likes to take me fishing, and so I have to wear a life jacket on the boat. And then you go to the world around us. So you go to we. So then they'll start talking about like, well, I've seen the movie Titanic and they didn't have enough life jackets. Or there was the duck boat incident a few years ago and there was a horrible drowning incident. And then we kind of get to talk about, okay, well, where is Berlin? It's in Germany. Well, what's going on in Germany? And then we do a reveal. So this is an artwork by A Weiwei, a prominent Chinese artist. And he created this to discuss Syrian refugees coming to Berlin from Greece. Let's see. I think that's you.
So aside from the See, Think, Me, we looked at our rubrics and we decided to streamline them by removing our time spent as a grading factor, focusing instead on standards-based assessments. In our PLC, we've tested different grading methods. Mrs. Hapke has used a 0 to 3 proficiency scale with lower point values, like 20 to 30 points instead of maybe a 50 to 100 points per specific project. Mrs. Katz began adopting a similar methods this semester, and I've been trying to use more traditional, like what we've been doing, so that we have that base knowledge to see, just like any scientific experiment, like what's the constant. While it's early to measure impact, we've noticed students are more focused on demonstrating understanding of the art standards rather than how many points did I get overall to get the A. And thanks for listening to our presentation.
So you probably noticed there are several things in common between all of these different PLC teams. They're talking about regularly collaborating around their curriculum, making common instructional decisions, identifying opportunities where students maybe could use additional support or need some additional academic work and problem solving around that, and providing the right timely interventions so that ultimately, whether we're talking about a first grade English language arts standard or a foundational art skill that a student acquires in high school, that student has the opportunity to master that skill before they finish out that grade level or that course. And that's what we're doing with this collaborative Wednesday time. We're focusing on looking at what those state standards are, what is our curriculum dictating that we're teaching, what does our assessment data say about our students and where they're learning, how do we make changes that are timely to instruction so that there is a constant opportunity for the right support for kids. So I'm going to invite a couple of them back up just to talk a little bit about why they feel like this Wednesday time that we've protected is so valuable to them.
So our plan periods are focused more on parent communication, grading, individual lesson planning, other meetings, bulletin boards. And this protected PLC time really gives us time to dive deep into curriculum, have meaningful discussions on data analysis to determine best support for our students, researching best practices together as a team, best practices for instruction and collaboration with our interventionists. They can tell us what those best practices are as well. And all of that gives us time on Wednesday mornings to do that.
Covered it so good. So what questions can we answer as an awesome group of PLC?
Yeah, well,
teams?
let me start, right? And you know where I'm going with this, Erin, right? Because I did 2 visits with you, I think, this year, multiple visits with Josh, a couple with Dr. Luttrell. It was a personal goal of mine to get out to each of our learning centers, PLCs this year. I think I missed Dayton Creek. That was the only one that I missed. And I got to tell you, if you want to see a teacher's eyes throw laser daggers at you, interrupt them during PLC. All right, because I've seen it in every building. But I've also said this to many of you as I was interrupting your sacred hour, and I do mean that. I've seen it for myself. It is sacred. And for anybody out there that's is live or is going to watch this, just take a look at some of the reports that you guys presented to us, like the phonics and the tracking and everything like that. You know, in the business world, we call it KPIs or QoS or QoE. And this is exactly what you guys are doing on a micro level with minds, with individuals. And I wish we could force every parent in our district, I know you guys wouldn't like it, but to bring them in and have them actually see what is going on during a PLC. If I had to sum up PLC in one word, as I've seen it demonstrated by our staff and our teachers, it's passion.
The only thing I wanted to say is I would love to recreate a presentation like this for our legislators because there's a lot of narratives out there about what's not happening in schools or things that are happening. And I don't think they have any idea the amount of strategic decision-making and things that are happening to help every single student do better. And so thank you, all of you. The only question I'd have for you, Dr. Smith, is are these like the cream of the crop or is this pretty typical about what you see around the buildings? Because I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure.
I would say this is very typical. While these PLC teams are absolutely outstanding and they're a great representative of their schools and their grade levels and course levels, I really think you could pop into any
room that's hosting a collaborative PLC meeting and see the same things that they discussed tonight happening on those Wednesday mornings. All of our PLC teams are focusing on curriculum, they are focusing on instructional strategies, analyzing their assessment data, and discussing what are the right next steps for each individual student. So it would be amazing to have every parent, every legislator, and anyone who's interested come visit or learn more about the PLC process. I think they'd be very impressed with what our teachers are doing to support kids every day.
I've been to a number of PLCs with the folks here and I appreciate it. And, you know, one of the things is, and I think it was said, this is now part of our DNA. This is what we do, right? Because we've kind of talked about PLC several times and maybe I'm picking up something that's not there that's like, hey, we really want to keep this. And so I'm just responding back that from my seat, I have no intention of doing anything ill to PLC. And I think it's part of us now. And so I just want to say that out loud.
Okay, any other thoughts or? Thank you for staying up so late for us.
Extra coffee tomorrow.
Yeah, there's no notes. School starts on time.
Okay. Moving on to 9.07, request to provide easement to the city of Spring Hill.
Yes, Mr. Meek, Director of Construction Safety, is gonna just give you a very brief overview. This city of Spring Hill, as you may know, is doing a widening of the roadway in front of our office from the roundabout up by the high school down up through Renner. And to do that work, there has to be some right-of-way easement that we currently have as our property that we would need to cede to the city. So tonight is just discussion to kind of share what conversations we've had with the city and then ideally what the time frame would be to come back and ask for action. So Tim.
Yeah, what I'm having passed around there is just an aerial overview. I've kind of took a highlighter and marked 4 areas on there. Those are the 4 areas the city is asking for easements. 3 of them are construction easements. 1 of them is a permanent drainage easement. The permanent drainage easement, just for your reference, is right out here, the main ditch that goes underneath 199th, just about a little over 100 foot west of the driveway here to this building. They're going to be coming in with some improvements for the highway, for the road, almost all the way up to what's called a weir wall, which is a little concrete embankment there in our stormwater retention area over there. And so they need that permanent because there's going to be some permanent structures on that. So, but everywhere else that they're asking for is just a construction easement. Our driveway here is one of the areas. They need construction easement because they've got to make the grades meet. So they've got to come onto our property a little ways just to make everything meet. The other one is kind of an entrance into I'd be the most western easement is an entrance into our football, kind of a track area there. There's already a whistle underneath there in the ditch that we used temporarily. It was actually left over from construction when we built the stadium there, and we wanted it so we can get big trucks and stuff like that when we have to bring somebody in with a big crane or whatever to work on football field lights and stuff like that. The city is going to take that, put concrete all the way to where the trail, 10-foot trail is there, and then they're going to gravel it all the rest of the way up to our ditch there. And so help us to improve that to make it a little bit better on our property as well. So one of the things they have asked the city is they've given us a number there of what they would give us for this deal. They've also asked if we would be willing to donate it. I will say first was no. Second was maybe. There is a little bit of history, I guess, for lack of a better thing that I can share with you, before I'm gone here in about a month and a half. The history will be gone from that part of it maybe, but, when we built this building and the Educational Support Center, the city wanted us to put a sidewalk across 199th. We said no, because number one, they didn't know where any future roads or anything else were going to go. Along with that was an agreement though, that we would help fund that sidewalk at the time when they finally had it down as to where that roadway would go. Plus, there's a couple other conditions they had to meet. They had to have their comprehensive plan completely done. They also had to have the developer here to the east say they would bring their sidewalk to the sidewalk we would be willing to build at the time as well. The city has talked to us a little bit about that. So we're still kind of negotiating that part of it out. So don't get too hung up on the amount there right now, because we're trying to negotiate that. I'm trying to really see if we can just walk away from it. We don't owe them anything. They don't owe us anything for the easement as well. So if we can get away with it without having any cost to us, that's probably the best scenario in the long run, because we do owe them some money for that sidewalk, our portion of it. We're not paying for we wouldn't be paying for a full 10-foot trail that they're trying to put in. We would be paying for a 4-foot sidewalk, basically part of it, because that's all we agreed to at the time was a standard 4-foot sidewalk like you would have anywhere else. So, and any questions really? I mean, John, you look like you got one.
Well, yeah, I don't want to point. Number one, I love the thinking on swapping, but the drainage easement in there, that's you probably have the same thought and you probably say it better than I will.
Well, no, I don't know where but there's eventually going to be housing development over there. How is that going to I mean, I tried to skim through this as much as I could, but they're going to have to put storm drain in there, and the city's not going to be able to allow their runoff to come into that. Drainage.
I'm going the same way, which is what's the elevations there? Because are we pushing or are we getting?
No, it's all downhill. I mean,
so it's all downhill
running that way.
Yeah, because it used to run across under there and into the pond that used to be there as well. But the pond's been drained there, so it'll all be downhill, and it'll be probably part of the stormwater drainage path that'll have to be through that development. So,
well, that's
whether it's going to be surface or whether they'll pipe it, who knows at that point? And I
just want to make sure this isn't underwater and.
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of the thing is, just clearly establishing that water runs downhill. And so when we're not here in 15 years and somebody goes, oh, well, I can just raise the grade here. And now it pushes everything from that side onto us.
No, it's part of their plan as far as stormwater drainage. I mean, they've actually got a plan for, with the potential apartments that they were looking at putting in southeast of here. There was some development there, never has gone through yet, but that whole area has a drainage area through that. So, and the city's actually been working quite a little bit on that to uncover things and make sure that they can get positive slope down through that property there. If you've noticed, it's all been cleaned up quite a little bit and it's all there too. So,
yeah, because that was my question, because if it was going to come back on us, I wanted a rebate on our stormwater.
Yeah. And there's a couple other things that they will do. They will be, again, it's 10-foot trail. It's not technically a sidewalk. It's a trail. Calling it a trail allows them to get by with some things that you can't do with a sidewalk. The trail can have a little bit more slope to it. A trail is actually better. A 10-foot trail is actually better for us for maintenance, because we can get all of our equipment up and down it. We can even run a truck up and down it if we want to clear snow and stuff like that off, where a 4-foot sidewalk, we don't have anything that can clean it very well other than a guy with a shovel. 6 foot's what we try to put in around our buildings and stuff, just because that way we can get our equipment on it and clean it. So.
Well, we're be money ahead to trade it, because $6,000 isn't going to cover that.
Oh, no.
I do that deal every day and twice on Sunday.
And they're talking about crediting some of the stormwater fee that we had to pay to them as well to this project, because it is technically stormwater related, because there's gonna be a lot of underground pipe put in for stormwater along this road. They're calling it a Super 2, if that means anything to anybody. It's basically, it's gonna be 199th Street to the west of the roundabout, a wider.
Yeah, this is part of the mark.
Yeah. Mhm. So I think there's be a little bit of CARS funding for it too, so, yeah.
How close will that easement be to the baseball field? Will it be significantly closer or
No, huh?
no, it'll be okay?
Yeah, it'll be fine. The ones that are, they're actually going any closer to any existing structures, really, they're all temporary construction easements. So, yeah, and really the part that they want permanently is pretty much useless because of all the stormwater that runs down there through. Anyway, if we want to ever do anything, we're gonna have to build a structure around it in order to do something as well. I don't see
We
us.
spent a lot of money on those Quick Creek bags that got stacked up.
We did, and we've had a lot of people
Saying.
Yeah, they might.
Still there. They're still there. Still there. Just saying.
That's one of our former employees' better ideas, actually, because it really did a great job. And we get a lot of people commenting, wanting to know, how'd they do that? And
It's the rage on social media.
yeah, people
Yeah.
will, yeah.
Cheap retaining walls.
Yeah.
It's hey,
And it's worked good for, I don't know how many years now, probably close to 5 when you put the first one in, maybe a little, 4. So, yeah. So, all right. Hey.
It's obviously going to affect traffic, right? I have to believe there's at some point temporary or.
The road, primarily the road bed that they're putting in, the new road is going to be to the north of the existing road. So they're going to try to maintain 2-way traffic most of the time. Timeline, they probably, it's really good timing. They're going to try to start about the time school starts. I mean, just how it works out. I mean, they've actually been working on this over a year already. I've looked at plans over a year ago on it. So if it gets actually started this fall, and it's about a 1-year timeline to do it, but their plan is to try to keep two-way traffic on 199th the full time through it. They said if they can't, then they would like to try to do it over doing tie-ins and stuff like that, try to do it over weekends or holidays. So, so it'd have least effect on it.
They're gonna
Time at the high school.
They're gonna plan on repouring our approach and everything once they bust that out to move that, put that in and then reattach it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually it's kind of a good thing because right where we attach to 199th, there's kind of a little low spot there anyway, so.
Yeah, it's just that they'll be cutting out a big section to move it back. So.
Yeah, and they're keeping at least one lane into us all the time. I mean, and I told them we could deal with that if it's a short period of time with one lane in, one lane out, just because we don't have a huge amount of people coming and going from here, so. Yeah.
This is just for information only, right? Or is this coming back to us for?
It will be coming back, maybe.
I was talking to a representative from Atmos a couple of weekends ago, and according to him, it's a done deal.
It's a done deal, but they still have 3 or 4 other property owners that they're trying to deal with as well, so.
Okay.
Yeah, if we can get the final, they wanted it back, tonight, and I said, no, you can't have it back tonight. City staff, and I actually think it's more the guy that has the land company real estate, because he probably wants to get paid for his work, that was pushing it, because city staff is good with, we've got to talk again this next week to talk to them about what they feel like that we can work out as far as the right solution that's good for both of us. I would like to bring it back the first meeting in June to get approval so that they can move on. Obviously, if we start arguing too much and all, they can come back with eminent domain and have proceedings, but that's going to delay them even further.
We're 2 government entities having an eminent domain fight. My only, and maybe it was in there and I totally missed it. Are they looking at changing the speed on this roadway after this enhancement?
I haven't seen any signage stuff there. The prints that I've seen haven't been that detailed yet as far as signage. So.
I would be.
They're only doing a mile stretch.
Yeah.
Well, and that I'm hoping that It doesn't.
I would think, I would think being what the other section of 199th, the Super 2 is still 45 miles per hour. I would think it's going to stay 45 miles per
Yeah,
hour.
I would be hoping for commitment on that.
Yeah.
Or as close as we can get.
Yeah. It's always up to change by any time they want to do it anyway, so.
Yeah, it is, but it's, like it just, because the roundabout I love. And as long as we can keep traffic flowing in there safely and getting kids and staff in and out of the high school, the longer the better. I wouldn't imagine they would change that, but.
No, they're not changing the roundabout at all.
Yeah, they've already sunk the money and I
Yeah.
was gonna ask that.
They are putting a little pipe underneath. They are gonna have to close it for a day or so because I don't know if you drive through there in the winter, the center island will drain out and have an area where they're freeze. So they're gonna try to put a little little dry drainage area in there to put a pipe out so it doesn't run out on the surface. Sometimes those work, sometimes they don't because water's gonna go where water wants to go in those kind of situations anyway, so.
Gravity hits the wall.
Yeah, so. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Meek. Okay, trucking along, 9.08 KASB membership. We had a packet come in the mail. I believe it's uploaded here. I think Dr. Robinson was going to discuss maybe some of the perks that we get by being KASB members.
There is quite a bit that our administrators are accessing. I think that was one of the questions that came up previously, especially with a number of new directors. There are extensive programs for providing support to new directors, specifically seeing Mr. Tyler in the back attending his first, well, maybe not his first, the first I'm aware of USD230 board meeting. We've discussed throughout his process the potential of the Thrive program. They also have the ACES program that Mr. PV will access as well. HR, there's a number of things that they do, everything from job posting for our higher level director administrative positions. This last year, we used it for executive directors, our director positions, and building principals. A number of PD training kind of things. And some of those, there's other options that we could go with, but not at that cost point. So what I'll do, we've got a pretty comprehensive list. It's not going to cover everything that we've obtained just from working with our director team. I'll get it to Mrs. Henderson in the morning and share it with all of you. But there is quite a bit that we're accessing, and the legal assistance piece, which is a fairly small portion of it. I think between departments, and there's a number of directors here that can correct me if I'm wrong, we're using that several times a month. Normally it's less significant things or things if for some reason Mr. Goheen is not available and you need a more immediate answer. It's a nice piece to protect our district as well. So I just put my 2 cents in that I think there is quite a bit that our administrators are accessing. I know there's some changes with KSB and where they're going that the board needs to consider, but we'll share this information just so you have it before you take any action.
Did anyone else have any thoughts? I thought since there was so much change with KSB and it's quite a few dollars, that if anyone had comments or thoughts.
I think the way I looked at it is it kind of 2 birds at least, right? All of the instructional, informative stuff that they provide. It's almost like insurance. It's continuing ed. It's it's less than $1,200 a month. I know, yeah, $14,000 sounds like a lot, but I think I look at it basically as a continuing ed insurance type policy. It's nice to have when you need it, right?
And I don't know that it was mentioned, but the part about the keeping up with stuff in the legislature, that is a huge piece of what they do. Whether we always are on the side of what they're saying or not, they at least have information out there on a weekly basis of where the stages of the legislation is, which I think is pretty helpful too.
The other piece I didn't mention was the policy piece, and I know you guys are aware of that. I think when we discussed this, we discussed looking at other options for policies, and I could check again if that's the direction we go. The advantage to KSB is that they are providing Kansas-specific policy, where a lot of the other groups are going to be national organizations, and we'd still have to have someone assisting us in interpreting statutory changes and things like that that occur every spring. So there is a benefit that way, at least getting a sample policy that addresses statute changes for us to consider.
Yes, and they still owe us our review.
Update on that, we have it. I actually, when I said I started working through it today, so I won't bring that to you in June. What I'll bring to you in June are the regular, just annual updates. But what I'm doing with those is if they made a change to the policy that being recommended, that we're not going to duplicate and do it twice. I'm incorporating everything. I will also at that point bring you some recommendations on how we might, it is as expected a lot. And some different options for the board to start considering as to how we might want to break that apart or tackle the larger policy review, which is going to be so much fun for everybody next school year. But we do have it.
We do have it, but I want to dial in on something I think was just said there, which is they went through our entire policy review and gave it back to us. And that isn't inclusive of the changes that are coming out in the summer.
So they, twice a year, they still give, it lines up with the December policy review. I haven't seen, normally about this time, we'll get a May review, that'll be any updates. December had 15 policies. A lot of those were grammatical type things, which I'll hold, and we'll just address those when we do the bigger review. The only thing I'm bringing to you from the December one will be things that are statutory, or I think it would at least be like the storage of medicine. That's a pretty significant change. I will at least bring that to the board, and you all can decide if that's something you want to tackle at this point or not. But what I'm finding so far, and I haven't got very far into it, John, is that the policies that were recommended in December are addressed in our policy review as well. So they're
okay.
But I don't know.
Great, because I thought you were saying that they hadn't.
No,
it wasn't current, and I was.
No, what I don't know is what they'll present in May as additional updates.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I had two thoughts. Doug, could you help us and send us information on how much we paid last year? If it was the same or similar, I'm sure it's not, I'm sure we're not paying less this year, but whatever that looks like, just so we can compare our membership with NSBA in it and not. And I cannot remember my other one, but if anyone has thoughts, no thoughts, I say we add it to the consent agenda for next week, next meeting.
That's your consensus.
Perfect. All right. Moving on to 10.01, 2025-26 handbooks and athletic code of conduct.
It seems like we've been talking about this for a long time. The only piece that's not here is I'm still working with the middle school athletic directors on a code of conduct, and I will bring that back to you in June when it's done. But I don't want to hold up the rest of it. We need to continue moving forward. So we are recommending the same changes that you've heard, I think, 2 meetings previously. And the high school code of conduct, Mr. Williams and Mr. Fregon did make a change to the drug and alcohol piece, which I think last time we had we had contradictory statements, and they stayed with a first and second offense, which they thought, I won't speak for them, but they thought was just a better option for high school students and the way our coaches are managing things.
Can I have one question of clarity? Is that, does this cover offenses happening off campus, out of school property? And what does that look like?
I think it could, the way it's structured now. I think when you had the previous statement in where it was an automatic dismissal from the team, I think this gives them, but I'll clarify that, Mrs. Melius, just to make sure. Typically right now you'll have more offenses for drug and alcohol use off of school property than at school, which is a good thing from the school side of things, but I'll clarify with them.
So you think that, I'm
Go
so
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
If they were caught off campus, out of school, that has no bearing on their performance and their ability to play on our teams and be part of our activities.
That's not what I'm saying. I mean,
Okay.
I just want to get clarification from them on that piece, just to make sure I'm not misspeaking, but I'm anticipating that it would, but I'll get clarification and share it with the board.
But I think we can go ahead and move to approve 10.01, 2025-26 handbook and athletic code of conduct.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Rachel, please take the vote.
Mrs. Milius,
No.
Mr. Hole,
Yes.
Mrs. Baker,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Chitwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
approved.
All right, moving on to 11.01, future discussion items.
I would like to add a future discussion item regarding the use of IXL in our schools. Dr. Smith had I had exchanged some emails with her, and I shared some of her feedback via email to the board this evening, and take your time to look at that. But she has recommended that we collect some feedback from both parents and staff, either through like a survey or leveraging our building site councils. And so I just think it would be valuable for us to discuss how we want to go about that, and getting that, whether we want to do a survey or doing something through site councils. So I'd like to add that on there. And then I'd also like to ask for an update on Doug's request. I wasn't at that meeting on April 14th, but regarding the collection and review of the data for the devices, screen use as it relates to school performance, as well as, comparing the iPads versus the Chromebooks. So I wanted to see if we could get a status update on where we are in gathering that information and what we can kind of expect to see on that, and if we can get that added on fairly quickly. Because I think that's a urgent discussion.
Just because it's a future item doesn't mean it's actively being pursued, does it? Do we have to do something to make it be pursued?
Yeah, I think we have to convert it to
Right,
a board work calendar.
right.
Is that something we want to add to our next meeting?
Yeah, I kind of.
Well, can I?
Aaron left, so I guess.
Yeah, Aaron's gone, so let's pile it on now. No.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, one of the reasons why I'm kind of zeroing in on this, as I know others are as well, is in anticipation of the new school year in the fall. And I think it'd be really important for us to provide some type of transparency as it relates to the use of glass screens, if you will, in the elementary schools and its direct correlation to student performance. I have my own suspicions. I've done a little groundwork research myself. But I'm really curious to see what impact it's had on our district, because ultimately I would like to inform parents so that they can then make an informed decision as to whether or not they want to participate in our technology use, because that is an option for the parents to opt out of being able to use screens in the classroom.
Dr. LaChelle? what do you think, it looks like to add that as a discussion somewhere? How much lead time would that take?
Can we start with understanding what screen time
Yeah.
looks like in the classroom? Like before we jump to the impact, I'm just curious, what does the screen time even look like? Like minutes, hours, purposes? What are we talking?
Because I was going to kind of say, I think we can have a discussion about the discussion about like the metrics, because I think there's probably two aspects to this. One that's kind of the acute, overall policy, but I think there's a lot of discrete data and variance that is probably going to take time to collect. That's my guess. So I think a discussion about the discussion. I know that sounds kind of weird, but we're 2 weeks out of school, so
Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
it
Maybe.
may need to be a work session type thing, because this is a
Yeah,
very
okay.
large topic, and I think there's a lot of data out there already that's done that could potentially be discussed. So I'm thinking that a work session might be more appropriate for that type of conversation.
And before we jump into any date, we got to know what we're looking at. Because if we find out, oh, it's in this elementary school for 15 minutes a day, I don't want to waste a work session talking about that. But if we find out it's a significant chunk of time, then we are going to have to dive into the data. So that's where I would like to start. I'd like to know how much we're talking, what are we talking, and who.
Yeah, April, so where I'm coming at it from too is that correlation to performance, and here's why. Is because in the past, we've been presented with information as it relates to technology, right? One over the other. Just most recently, I think the iPads. And the data that we were provided was based upon strictly teacher input and wasn't really backed up with any type of science other than what the teachers were basically reporting to us on how the screens would be used, right? And that's fine. I mean, that's all part of a bigger picture. But what I'm really interested in is the correlation between devices and performance.
I would recommend that when we approach it from a standpoint of going back to have our staff, which I think we can get somewhat accessible, is where have we been with our screen time? Where are we at screen time now, elementary, middle, and high school? Bring that, let you all look at that, explain, answer questions. Then we move to the phase of, okay, we know where we are. We know where we are right now. How does that compare to where we want to be? Do we want to have less? Do we want to have more? And then we have to strategize. Okay, well, how are we going to make that happen to get less or more?
Well, and to pile on into the considerations in the conversation is cost as well. So just to toss that out there. I don't think you'll be able to have that ready, but that's the other component that I'll be interested in. But
Okay.
this is kind of a good segue because kind of like devices, the topic I wanted to add, and maybe it's just me saying it out loud, is we've got a lot of outgoing knowledge. What if anything, do we want to ask for that might impact an outgoing director who's going to have the information readily available now? Whether it's financial or technology or whatever. So that was me using future discussion items just to say something.
Okay, well, I do think if that's something that you want to, why don't you think through and give us a timeline on when maybe something like that, if we can use the work session, whatever that looks like. Something I'd love to add to topics for discussion. And it's more of a, I don't know, we just heard a ton of information about our site-based classrooms, but I think it's really hard for all of us to grasp it as we sat and listened to it. It's hard for us to grasp the difference in each of them. And how they utilize it and how it's beneficial to our teachers and our students and just our buildings. I'd love it if we could take tours of those and with the kids in there and see the differences in each of them. And hearing it is one thing, but I'm like, okay, when I go into the schools, am I going to realize which one that is without actually seeing it in play? So I'd love for us to take a tour of some of these site-based classrooms. That would be my request. Anything else you want to add to future discussion items? Okay, moving on to board work calendar.
Coming up to the end of the year, we've only got one more meeting and I think we're on track. There's some reports scheduled for, in June, we'll have our second, one of our meetings in June, we'll have the second report from our world-class staff. So we're on track and gonna wrap up the year, and then we'll be planning for the full calendar that'll start over in July.
Okay. Okay. Anything you need to switch around or move? Everything look good? 13.01 reports, board member reports.
I'm sorry. Pause on board work.
Yeah,
I would just sick leave buyback. Did we do that last meeting?
we have not done.
It wasn't on this one. I'm kind of looking over at Michelle. Cause it's on the 12th, right? Did we miss something?
If so, we'll get it to you next month. I know Sarah does that. She does payroll for us, so.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep. It's just, if we had it tonight, it's just an estimate because school isn't out yet and that number's gonna change, but we'll share with you at the first meeting in June. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We'll have a final number for you in June.
Is that something we should move to June? The timing seems like it should move there.
In my opinion, yes, because then you're approving a final number. But
And the June meeting's comfortable for you to have a final number with me?
it is with me. I'd have to look at the policy see if that's kosher with that. So we can check when we report in June.
Okay, thanks, Sean. That's okay.
I'm sure people get paid.
Thank you. Okay, 13.01 board member reports.
In the spirit of brevity, I'll just kind of cover its the end of year activity with site council, right? So I attended Prairie Creek Site Council, Woodland Springs Site Council, volunteered all day at Prairie Creek for the Body Venture project, and then of course attended 4 of the learning centers just last week on the Teacher Appreciation Week activities with administration.
I know it's late, but what Oregon were you?
The brain.
Oh.
Of course you are. I went to the Spring Hill Middle School Site Council meeting. Just some topics. They had 6 school records broken in track, which is pretty big deal when that school's been around so long. Some of our newer schools, they're breaking records all the time. And then we had a discussion about 6th graders competing in some sports because it is allowed by CASHA, but there's some logistical barriers to that. And then they talked a little bit about Project Lead the Way and had their little kits and showed those. So that was interesting. They have enough for 15, they have 30 kids interested. So there's again some limitations of what maybe they'd really like to do. So anyway, it's good site council meeting.
I attended the early education site council. They talked a lot about getting the kiddos ready for kindergarten, and they're doing a little like family thing this year. They're really trying to get families and more outreach, a little bit more like some of our other schools have, parent organizations, that kind of stuff. So they're doing a lot of work they've partnered with the high school quite a bit that they talked about, which was really cool. They had some great pictures. Then I attended Dayton Creek Site Council, and they gave a presentation on their reading intervention work that's happened. And I think I told John at the last meeting, I was trying to think about gross foods so I didn't tear up, because every other teacher in there was in tears. You just saw these little smiling faces saying what their words per minute, I believe, were and what they are now. And we're talking like unbelievable, like 150% increases. So it was just a really very, very cool, moving presentation. And I've seen that the reading interventionist out there talk twice, and both times she's so passionate about what she does. It brings out some visible emotions. So it's pretty cool. I also had the chance to hit the variety show and the Pops concert at the high school. We have some incredibly talented students. We've talked about Henry Seitz a few times here, but if you haven't had the chance to hear him play the piano, you should do that. That's just what I'm gonna leave it. And then the last thing I just want to touch on is Mrs. Manning was here, but her encouraging the purchasing of the shirts that the students made, I thought was incredible. I know I purchased a couple, and I just really appreciate her getting the hard work of our students out the way she did. So that's all.
Let's see, I did the Timber Sage Site Council meeting. They talked a lot about their Teacher Appreciation Week. It was really successful, well received. And that school, one thing they said is they're only losing one teacher. So yay for retention. And they've had parent volunteers this year on Thursdays to help with reading and math win time and lunch. And next year you can be a volunteer to do recess duty. So might have to sign up for that one. And then they did their building needs assessment, which I know we're getting some of that data in July, but they had a significant increase in their community engagement, their school climate, and their trusting relationships, which I thought was really great. So the students are feeling like they have a trusted adult in the building that they can feel comfortable with and connected to. So yay for them.
Awesome. What else? I went to the high school site council meeting. They went over some testing scores and talked about the safety and security and some of the measures we've implemented there. Exciting to see some improvement and really validating to hear some of our concerns mirrored from the parents in there. So it's exciting that we were hearing them and we took action, and the school's doing a great job of also taking the further steps. I have been lucky enough to participate in Leadership Olathe this semester, and I graduate on Wednesday. So thank you to everyone for allowing me to do that. And it's been an interesting opportunity. I did Leadership Spring Hill 5 years ago. This is it's just different, and we have such a wonderful relationship with the city of Spring Hill and the Spring Hill Chamber of Commerce, and I think sometimes we take that for granted because we are just in the infancy stages of those relationships in Olathe. And so I would encourage anyone that feels like they want to get involved and help that relationship along to please do. The application process starts in October and November. Along with the one awesome thing that Leadership Olathe does is they include a student from their 5 Olathe high schools, like one student from each. And so I'm hoping that we can partner with them and include maybe a student from our high school. So that's the input they had was amazing. The engagement those kids put in is awesome. It was sometimes the adults had 0 comments and the students had all the comments. And so it's exciting to see that. So, and I attended the Spring Hill Educational Foundation golf tournament. Thank you that we were able to give 15 scholarships to our students. And it's exciting to hear them brag about themselves and see them celebrated for 4 years of hard work. And I want to thank BJ and Nick Hunt for the hard work. They've made a lot of improvements to bring in more dollars. We increased, and I feel like I'm off by a number of either 4 or 5 additional scholarships this year than we were last year. So a lot of hard work with the gala and with the golf tournament additions and things like that to help increase those funds to give more to our students. That's all for me. Anyone else? Okay, moving on, 14.01 Superintendent's Report.
Yes, graduation for the class of 2025 will be held this Saturday, May 17th at 10 a.m. at the high school. And then on that same day, Inside School will have their class of 2025 graduation at 2 p.m., same location. You should have received information about specifics in terms of time that if you do plan to attend, do please RSVP if you haven't already to Mrs. Henderson so that we can make sure that, especially for your gowns and everything, that they are all prepared, ready to go. The big one in my report is that ballots for our building opportunity bond election are due by noon tomorrow, May 12th. Yeah, you're right, May 13th. And so unofficial results will be posted sometime on that evening of the 13th. And again, but I do want to know, we've had a lot of individuals that have worked tirelessly to make sure that we inform our voters and so that they can make an informed decision. And like I said, we'll wait and see what the results are late evening tomorrow. But again, a lot hinges on that for our future and managing our growth. And then our final student attendance day is set for Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. So we have, starting tomorrow, 8 attendance days left in our school year. That's my superintendent's report.
Thanks, Dr. Luttrell. All right, well, with that, we are adjourned.